All right, good morning, everyone. Sorry for the late start. This morning, the invocation will be offered by Chaplain Joe Somage, I believe. And after that, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance. Those that wish to participate, please stand. Thank you for coming. Can you do it to the speaker?
For me?
You got it.
Yes. Thank you.
Good morning. My opening prayer today is, a lovingly Heavenly Father, we come to you this hour asking for your blessing and help as we are gathered together. We pray for guidance in the matters in hand and ask that you would clearly show us how to conduct our work with a spirit of joy and enthusiasm. Give us the desire to find ways to excel in our work. Help us to work together and encourage each other to excellence. We ask that we would challenge each other to reach higher and farther to be the best we can be. We ask this in the name of the Lord Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and welcome to the Pinal County Board of Supervisors regular meeting. It's May 18th, 2022. It is 9:35. We are in session. First item of business is call to the public. Consideration and discussion of comments from the public. Those wishing to address the Pinal County Board of Supervisors need not request permission in advance. Action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter or rescheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. I have four folks here. Let's see. We will start with Barry McCain.
Good morning, Supervisor McClure and Board of Supervisors, staff, and friends. My name is Barry McCain from Arizona City. Martin Luther King Jr. said, unless we learn to live together as brothers and sisters, we will die as fools. Because of the irresponsible actions of Supervisor Kavanaugh, Pinal County stands to lose $13 to $19 million or more. Money that could have been spent for Pinal County voters, babies, working families, veterans, disabled, first responders, help the elderly, or people under their purview. Pinal County Board of Supervisors and staff has been doing just their best they could. My heart goes out for the couple that lost their home to fire as each person in this house that I know of. Each of us were both shocked and horror when it happened. I don't know how Supervisor Kavanaugh felt. I don't understand why anyone would wish to jeopardize this county or allow preventable pain and suffering in this room, quite frankly. Sadly, we'll never be able to persuade some people who are more vocal and indeed strident people in this country who have jaundiced views, whatever we might put forward to demonstrate empathy and justice. If we may die together, then we must learn how to live peaceably together. Chairman McClure, anyone who would imply about this Board of Supervisors, staff, especially the county attorney and the sheriff, is both offensive and banal. It's been my experience that what we're experiencing right now is what they call a subliminal cabal.
Thank you, Mr. McCain. Supervisor Kavanaugh, you were called out. Do you care to respond?
Sure. I wasn't exactly sure what topic Mr. McCain was speaking on, but I think he mentioned something about a fire. And there was a fire, and I think what he's referring to is prior to the fire, the Pinal County Sheriff's Office ended dispatch service for the South Florence Volunteer Fire Department. And I think the issue, well, in fact, the county attorney spoke with me this morning on it, and some of the issues that were of concern maybe weren't issues of concern after all, but they canceled the 911 service and somebody's house burned down. And I was disappointed in the process. In fact, I've asked for an examination of the process to determine why these things, sort of a failure analysis, why this took place. And we've other information about the reasons dispatch service was ended that are, if true, very disturbing, having nothing to do with anything that has been spoken here in the public. So that's my comment. And Mr. McCain, you talk about getting along and having peace among people, and then you, rather than come to me and ask a question, you choose to attack me publicly instead. So this is an illustration of your values on display for the public, and I think you ought to take a look in the mirror when you go home.
Okay. Next is, I believe, Mr. Randy Craven. Good morning, sir. If you could please state your name and generally where you live.
My name's Randy Craven. I live at 5580 North Tomahawk Road up in Apache Junction. I got a few things I want to talk to you guys about today. One of them is about extensive abuse of temporary use permits. I have a neighbor to the west of me that has a salon at 1475 West McDowell Road called Salon de Casablanca. The county has issued this lady a temporary use permit, not one time, not two times, or three, but four times, dating back from 11/21 of 2019. I have made multiple calls to Supervisor Surdy, Lester Chow, Alan Quist, Paula Molinex, Sarah Smith, Heather Wright, and Jim Meadows, and nobody seems to have a response on why this temporary use permit has been issued for over 2.5 years now. The neighbors have tried to rezone. Their zoning was turned down for parking issues. They have not tried to go after a special use permit. Their last temporary use permit was signed by Mr. Alan Quist. My question is why is the county attorney signing temporary use permits? I also have easement rights that these people are using my property for an ingress and egress for residential use that is now commercial use. I have a copy of the temporary use paperwork that you guys provide when you get a permit. Dust control is a huge problem, and that's one of the questions that's in here. None of that has been taken care of. I have paperwork from Superior Court that says that these folks using my property as a nuisance to my family, as basically their driveway in and out is the backside of my house. And my question is why has this continued to go on for 2.5 years, and how come every time I call Lester Chow, Jeff Surdy, Alan Quist, nobody ever calls back, and nobody has any answers? So I figured I'd come here and I would chat with you guys about it and see if maybe somebody has an answer.
Thank you, Mr. Craven. Mr. Surdy, you were called out. Do you care to respond?
Yeah, my office was communicating with Randy. I haven't heard from you for a while, so I assumed it was being worked on, and I think we have made a little bit of strides up there, but I will look into it again. We do have a new person in charge of that whole department. And, yeah, I'm all for home businesses unless the home business intrudes on other people's lifestyle, which I think is happening up there. So we will look back into it again.
So I have called you, and you have yet to call me back. So I just want to make that clear. And I also want to know why the county attorney is the one that's signing off
great.
on temporary use permits.
So, Mr. Craven, we can't respond really to this. So, let me
Okay.
just say your time is up. But Mr. Liu, can you look into this?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. We'll have staff look into it and get back with you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Can we get some kind of a time frame on when we could hear something back? Because this has been going on for 2.5 years now, so.
Yeah, I'll have to get in with the team, and then we'll get with you as soon
Okay.
as possible.
I'll follow up on Monday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Craven. Let's see. I believe David Miller. Good morning.
Morning.
If you could please state your name and generally where you live, please.
David Miller. I live at 4080 North Cortez Road, Apache Junction. I'm here, actually, I have a question/comment based on the last gentleman's issue with his neighbor, and they're my neighbors to some degree. They're getting ready to, or I've been told that they are going to be issued they're going to be able to rezone to a commercial license for their business up there. We've lived out there since the early 70s. We actually have tried this. My daughter has tried this down where she lives off of McKellips Road Cortez and McKellips. She would have liked to have opened up a similar business. She spoke with somebody with the county. Don't know who. She probably didn't bother to write it down because you just come to assume that if they're a county representative, they're there for us, to help us, guide us, whatever. She was told it's not zoned properly, it's not zoned commercial, not going to happen. And then I find out that these guys are about to be issued this thing. It's kind of a slow pace, but it's going to happen according to some county people. And I'm a little disturbed. If this is good for them, it should be good for anybody in the area as long as they meet, whatever criteria to not, impose hardship or irritations on their neighbors or devalue property or so on and so forth. So that's really all I've got. I'm just a little bit disturbed, to say the least. And I'm sure you guys would be too if your neighbor was allowed to do something that you'd been told, no way. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. And again, Mr. Liu, can we look into this? Mr. Saban, Pete Saban.
Hi, Pete Saban, unincorporated Marana. Good morning, Chairman, Supervisors. Kind of a broken record here, but I would like to talk about 2020 election integrity again. Last time I was here, I talked about 2,000 mules, and I hadn't seen the whole movie yet, but now I've seen the whole movie, and I'm pretty angry. There's a lot of things that I want to say, but the geofencing technology that they use to identify and track people's cell phones is highly accurate. In fact, the DOJ is using it to prosecute the unarmed protesters at the January 6th Stop the Steal rally. The CDC actually was recently revealed that they used the same technology to track people during the pandemic to see if they were following social distancing guidelines, so it's accurate to within 6 feet. So any fact checkers online that tell people that this technology is not accurate are not being truthful. Some states allow family members to drop off ballots for others, but in no case does a state allow a ballot trafficker, or i.e. a person who gets paid to turn in ballots. That's illegal in all 50 states. And True the Vote, their criteria was someone had to visit 10 ballot boxes, and they had to then go to a loosely affiliated 501c3 that was partisan towards the Democrats. And if they visited that afterwards, presumably to get paid, after visiting all these multiple drop boxes, then they were tracked and counted. In Arizona, it was 200 mules in Maricopa County, 20 ballot boxes each, 5 ballots per box for a total of 20,000 votes in a state that was decided by 10,000 votes. So that alone right there, not even counting machines or anything else, could have changed the outcome of the election. So the other thing I wanted to say is the courts that looked at, none of the courts in this country looked at this. Every single one was denied for lack of standing. There was not one discovery, not one piece of evidence was shown to a judge anywhere in this country. They were just summarily dismissed. So to say that the courts dismissed this and it's fraud, it's a lie, is also untrue and inaccurate. So the movie's coming back out. It's going to be out on the 20th. It's also for free online, rumble.com. I also brought my copy if somebody wants to get it. I just want to get it back. So my closing is I would like to request you guys to consider that we look at Pinal County data. I want to thank you also that our election system seems to be very good here, but it's still susceptible to this type of ballot trafficking fraud. So if we could look at the ballots, look at the cell data, maybe it would have to be purchased, but if we could do that, might be worth looking at. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saban. Are there others that wish to address the board?
Roberto Ravelis, resident of Gold Canyon, a truth speaker. I will consistently appear before you anytime I hear untruths spoken, movies replaced for the certification process that you engaged in, that every 15 county engaged in Arizona, that every state and federal court looked at. Movies could have, should have, is not evidence. Whatever evidence was reported found no standing in any of the state or federal courts. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Ravelis. Are there any others that wish to address the board? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 2, presentation of certificates of service to employees for 20 years and the recognition of retirement. Mr. Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have 3 employees that we want to recognize today. 2 of them are not here, but I do want to mention them. They've been with the county for 20 years. The first is Lucinda Amarillas, and she started out as a juvenile detention officer in 2002 and has promoted and is currently a juvenile detention officer 4. And so congratulations, Lucinda, and thank you for your 20 years of service. We also have Jesus Pacheco from the county attorney's office, also hired back in April of 2002 as a victim witness advocate, and who is currently a senior victim advocate. And so thank you, Jesus, and congratulations on 20 years. Oh, Lucinda is here. I'm sorry. My note said she wasn't going to be here. Thank you, Lucinda. And did you want to come up and say anything, or did you have anybody that wanted to say anything?
Good morning. Good morning. I just wanted to thank the county for the career that I've had here. It's been a wonderful experience for me. And Pinal County is a great employer. I work for Juvenile Court Services, and I've been a supervisor there, I think 17 years as a supervisor. And I'm sure many of you know how far Juvenile Court Services has come in that time, and the conditions of detention and how much better the service we provide the youth and families of Pinal County. So anyway, I just wanted to say thank you, and it's been a great career.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Yeah, and if you want to take a picture, since for our recognitions of years of service, we didn't have anybody else here present for that particular one. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, if the board wanted to come down and take a picture.
Sure. Shall we go down? Photo op.
1. And again, one more. 3, 2, 1. There we go.
Leo, can I just say something? Cindy just took over the microphone and didn't give me the chance to say anything.
Thank you, Denise. Of course you can.
Just real quick, I wanted to say that, Cindy has obviously been a very valuable employee for Pinal County for the last 20 years. And, I think she was extremely instrumental when we moved from the old detention facility on Adamsville Road to the new facility that we have in 2007. And she was also a part of that transition team. And it's not easy just to pick up a bunch of kids and move them from Adamsville Road to Diversion Dam Road. And the other thing that I just want to say is that, change is really difficult, and especially in the juvenile detention facility. And Cindy is probably one of many, but being a position as a supervisor, it was really important to have the buy-in with the change as a supervisor, because they're the ones that really kind of lead the work. And she did that. And so from a change from a juvenile detention center on Adamsville Road to where we're at now, as she mentioned, it was a huge cultural change in our organization. And I just want to commend her for being part of that change. So thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Denise. And yeah, for anybody who's ever visited those two facilities, it's quite the upgrade to Diversion Dam Road from Adamsville, and it's an impressive facility. So we do have one more employee that we want to honor and recognize, but it's not just for years of service. There's 17 years of service involved, but it's for retirement. And so Lester Chow, I believe, is here, and he's going to be retiring. And as they walk up, as Brent walks up here, I'll just want to say thank you to Lester and remind him that he's the first one who's ever taught me what a pork chop is on a road. I never realized how much food names were involved in road infrastructure, but it's quite fascinating.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, first off, let me say what a pleasure it is to be able to have the opportunity to walk up and stand in front of you and speak about Mr. Lester Chow. I've had the opportunity over the years to work with Lester in many different capacities, but over the last 4 months, I've been able to work with Lester hand in hand in terms of the Community Development Department. A few things I would say about Lester is he's a consummate professional. His technical skills are excellent, and he's an absolutely wonderful employee. But I think the highlight of what I would have to say is that he's an even better person. Lester's a wonderful guy. He's a wonderful guy to work with. He's somebody you can depend on. He's got your back. He always shoots straight, and he has an incredible work ethic. Comes in early every day, stays late every day. I've asked him to do some things on the weekend, and he has graciously done that in order to keep this county moving forward. I really appreciate the time I've been able to work with him, and he's going to be sorely missed from our department. So join me in thanking Lester Chow for his service and congratulating him on his retirement.
I don't know what to say. I've been here for just under 18 years. The past 2.5 years have been probably the highlight, even though with the challenges of COVID, the heavy workload that we've had, I think those are probably my proudest moments. I just want to say that I wouldn't have made it this far, if it wasn't for my staff that in that department who come in every day, work hard, and I think, what everyone doesn't realize is that the county does have one hell of a department and all of its staff in community development. They're under tremendous pressure each and every day with everything that's going on. And thanks to them, I've made it this far. So they will be missed. Thanks, Brent, for everything that you said. And thank you to the board for all your support through all the years. Thank you.
Thank you, Lester.
Everyone want to come down and join us for a
One more
picture?
photo.
Bet.
The wing guy. And Mike, come over just a little bit. There you go. There we go. And 3, 2, 1, and one more. Go right here. 3, 2. Very nice. Thank you.
While Mr. McClure makes his way up here, I want to say some things too. In my short time as a supervisor, it's amazing, as big as this county is, that if you ask anything, Lester knows about every one of our districts, every issue that we have going on. And he even, when he would take a vacation, he was still working during his vacations. He would still be reaching out to us and helping us during vacation, which is amazing. So, thank you.
Supervisor Miller.
Mr. Chairman, yeah. So you probably saw us kind of chuckling there. The first time I met Lester was actually at a transportation summit that was being put on. And these two guys from Pinal County came over and said, "Hey, Supervisor Miller, what are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, staff, what's happening?" I said, "What are you doing here?" And they said, the county manager, Mr. Stanley at the time, assigned us to watch after you for 2 days. So Lester was like my shadow. They didn't want me to get in trouble. So I don't know who Leo's going to put in charge of looking after me going forward, but Lester's been a really good friend, and everything that's been said is absolutely true. He gets back to us, and I'll miss him tremendously.
Yeah, Lester, thank you very much for all the help you've given me over the last couple of years. I really appreciate it. And good luck on your venture forward. All right. Number 3, item 3, County Manager's Report. Mr. Liu.
And Mr. Chairman, just on
Oh,
that-
I'm sorry. Did you have more?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. I didn't know if our county engineer had some words. I'd heard maybe he did. I wanted to make sure he had an opportunity.
Yes, thank you, Leo, and Chairman, members of the board. I just wanted to say a few words as well. I've gotten to know Lester pretty well over the last 15 or so years, both inside and outside of work. And, a few weeks ago, he let me know that he was planning to retire, and, the news was kind of bittersweet. I recall thinking about, what a void that this would leave behind when he moves on. He has a unique skill set and a wealth of institutional knowledge that just simply can't be replaced. And, I really have enjoyed my time working with him over the years, and I really take pride in knowing what a difference he's made to this county. As was mentioned, he's had his hand in almost everything that's been built over the last, 18 years since he's been here. Not only is he a great colleague, but he's a great friend, and he will be missed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Is there any other?
That's it.
Moving. Okay, that's it. Okay, now we'll move on to item 3, Manager's Report. Mr. Liu.
Yes, just 3 items today. First one to mention, I know that there have been some requests and concerns about satellite TV providers and local channels, especially because our county is right in between, bordering 2 metropolitan areas. And so the way the FCC draws lines for local channel assignments, we're going to make an application to the FCC. And we understand, as Chairman, as you know, and as staff has been working with some of the satellite providers, that there has been success in other parts of the country in similar situations. So we'll be making an application, and when that time comes, we'll do a work session item to inform you and the public of exactly how we're going about it and exactly what we're requesting. And then on another item, there has been some concern about an emergency access gate over in the Gold Canyon area on Peralta Canyon Way between Sleepy Hollow Road and Fossil Springs Road. We have been working on this. We'd like to give an update on June 8th as to where we're at and how we're going to be moving forward on that. And then third, we have, there's been some concerns about Air Force training dropping flares that could be fire hazards up in the northern part of the county. So I know Supervisor Sturdy is working with our federal delegation, and we will be as well, and get Steve Block involved to make sure to see how we could best address those concerns. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Liu. Item number 4, Purchasing Division Report. Tara Peterson, good morning.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, and members of the board. I am Tiara Peterson, Purchasing Manager for Pinal County, and this is your purchasing report for May 18th, 2022. First, the board is requested to approve the following contract awards. RFP 222326 for Public Health Consulting. We recommend Cole Consulting LLC be awarded a contract beginning May 18th, 2022, with 3 optional 1-year extensions. The contract will be used by the Public Health Department. RFP 222426 for Public Health Accreditation Consulting. We recommend Cole Consulting LLC be awarded a contract beginning May 18, 2022, and this contract will also be used by the Public Health Department. Next, the board is requested to approve the following contract amendments for RFP 175123, printing, mailing, and email notifications of property tax documents. We recommend approval of amendment number 6 to exercise the optional extension period beginning May 30th, 2022 with the Masters Touch LLC. There are no extensions remaining, and the contract is used by the Treasurer's Office. RFP 192425 for printing and mailing evaluation notices. We recommend approval of amendment number 3 to exercise the optional extension period from May 6, 2022 through May 5th, 2023 with the Masters Touch LLC, and this contract is used by the Assessor's Office. Next, the board is requested to approve the following purchase request per Pinal County Procurement Code Section PC1-350, governing competition and practicable purchases exceeding $100,000 in the amount of $225,775 with supplier Esri for GIS software licenses used county-wide. Next, the board is requested to approve the following purchase request per Pinal County Procurement Code Section PC1-347, governing sole source purchases over $100,000 in the amount of $293,427.18 with Oracle America, Inc. for the annual maintenance and support for our E1 system, and this is also used countywide. Next, the board is hereby notified of the following cooperative purchases made. PO number 247147 with High Tech Network and Security Solutions in the amount of $249,504.53 for cloud and web security subscription licenses used by the IT department. And finally, the board is requested to approve the following cooperative purchases. Requisition 164087 with CDW Government in the amount of $417,901.05 for subscription licensing and software assurance products used by the IT department. And requisition 164182 with AT&T Datacom in the amount of $2,534,065.10 for 911 emergency services and telecommunication services. And this is used by the Sheriff's Department. And that concludes your Purchasing Division report for May 18th, 2022.
Thank you, Ms. Peterson. Does the board have any questions, comments? I always love the large numbers with 10 cents tacked on the end. That always looks good. All right. So I'd ask for a motion. Can I get a motion to approve the purchase?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the purchasing report as presented.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Peterson. Have a great day. Next, item 5 is consent items. All items indicated by an asterisk will be handled by a single vote as part of the consent agenda, unless a board member, county manager, or member of the public objects at the time the agenda item is called. Are there any items that any board member wishes to call or pull? Any from the public care to pull an item? Seeing and hearing none. Make it a motion to approve items A through AK.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve all items, consent items, A through AK, as presented.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen.
First time we've never pulled one.
That's impressive, yes. Okay, let's see. Now I will recess the Board of Supervisors' regular meeting to convene into special district meeting. We will be moving to we'll be meeting the Pinal County Flood Control District Board of Directors. And I will, go to the Flood Control District. I'm reading my agenda. Sorry about that. My lips are moving. All right. Oh, and we have two items, both consent items on the Flood Control District. All items indicated by an asterisk will be handled by a single vote as part of the consent agenda unless a board member, county manager, or member of the public objects to the item at the time the item is called. So, Mr. Supervisor Miller.
I'd like to pull item B.
Item B. All right. We only have one other option. Anyone else care to pull an item? No? All right. So may I get a motion to approve item A, please?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve consent items A through B minus B.
I did the quick math. I just said A, so okay. Okay. So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Motion A and B minus B passes. So, all right. So item B, Mr. Miller, you care to?
And really, just a comment here. For those that know me from a long time ago, I came up with a slogan years ago. It's called the Clean and Lean program, where governance on certain types of cases that are challenging can clean up the property, lean the property, and at some point that property will sell or transfer ownership, and we get paid back with interest. I believe there's an interest component to it as well. The program works, and so I just want to point it out that there are times that we need to do this. There's times we should do this, and we do outlay the cash on the front end, but we do get reimbursed and get our money back, and it's a benefit to the community overall. So I just wanted to point out that it's a method that we need to use when we can. I think Mr. Keller was looking at me and pointing at me about something.
Mr. Chairman, if I might add to that a little bit, I know Chris Watermaker's here, and we owe a lot to him for helping us on this project. This was a flood control, construction debris and other damage and stuff in a wash that we spent probably years orchestrating, collaborating, strategizing, getting a contractor that would be willing to go out there and clean this up, and then even, working with law enforcement to make sure that we could get proper access. And so this was an endeavor that involved a lot of different moving parts with the county. Public Works, law enforcement, the county attorney's office, and so forth. But it took a long time to get this done, and I think it is a good example of that. And I think Chris deserves a lot of the thank you on kind of herding us cats to get this done.
That's correct. And the reason for that is it was causing damage to the properties upstream because of this situation. Yeah. And, thank you, Chris. Did a great job there. And so with that, I'll make a motion to pass item B as presented.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Motion B passes. Thank you, gentlemen. And we will adjourn the Flood Control District Board of Directors meeting and go to the Public Health Services. Whoops. We will now convene the Public Health Services District Board of Directors meeting. And we have an entire item on this, and all items indicated by an asterisk will be handled by a single vote as part of the consent agenda unless a board member, county manager, or member of the public objects at the time the agenda item is called. Does anyone care to pull item A? Seeing anyone from the public? Seeing and hearing none. May I get a motion to approve item A?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve item number A as presented.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you very much. We will adjourn the Public Health Services District Board of Directors meeting and reconvene the regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. Let's see, item 8. Mr. Keller, I believe you're involved in this.
Mr. Chairman, this is where I relinquish my seat to outside counsel, to Annie McGuire, to come in and advise you because county staff from the Attorney's Office is representing the department in these hearings.
All right, thank you. Mr. Cameron, how are you?
Members of the board, Mr. Chairman, County Manager Craig Cameron on behalf of the Code Compliance Division of the Development Services Department. Your Honor, I believe you have my hearing memorandum. This is to augment
I'm sorry, my honor? I wrote. Thank you. I got a
think
wig.
all
Do I
of
get the
you-
wig too?
I think all of you are appropriately termed Your Honor in this proceeding. So
just checking.
I don't have a wig for you,
Oh.
though. I apologize. But in this particular matter, this is an appeal by Mary Koenig of the hearing office decision that took place some time ago. Since the time of my hearing memorandum, the property owner, Mary Koenig, has taken steps. As to 3 of the counts, 2 of the counts were premised on the fact that there was no primary use. A primary use in this case would be a permitted, inspected residence. There is now. As a result of that, I've been authorized by the Development Services Department to dismiss counts 1 and 2. So that is not needed. We have 1 remaining count that needs to be resolved. Since the hearing office decision, the property owner, I could describe as being diligent in taking steps to resolve all the code violations that are present there. As a result, we would be receptive to a request of a continuance of this appeal, possibly to the August timeframe. That would allow the property owner to make final arrangements and changes to the property that would remove the violations.
All right, thank you. Does anyone care to? I'm going to ask for a motion. Can I get a motion to approve item 8? Unless, oh, I'm sorry. Am I jumping ahead?
If we can hear from the appellate or the
I'm sorry.
representative.
I don't believe Mary Koenig is here, but somebody speaking on her behalf. Oh, she is here?
Sorry to jump ahead. Didn't mean to cut you out there.
I'm appreciative of the time that the county has taken to work with us in this matter and work with Mary. It's been quite a process.
Can we have your name?
I'm sorry.
That's a good idea.
The name and generally where you live.
John
yes.
Webster, Mesa, Arizona.
Thank you.
And I don't know how I got wrangled into this mess, but you know, I would go back to Luke chapter 14. Jesus came to the synagogue. There was a disabled lady that had been disabled for 18 years, and he healed her on the Sabbath. And the synagogue leaders ridiculed Jesus for that healing, calling it working on the Sabbath. Mary has been disabled, suffered. The challenges with the county have been difficult, and I'm looking for, the response that Christ had when you have an oxen mired in the mud. Would you go and get it out? Would you take your horse and water it on the Sabbath? I'm looking for the supervisors to help bring about healing in this process. That doesn't dissolve any responsibility to deal with the matters, but we have been working with the county, and I'm appreciative that the county has been working with us to bring about resolution through permitting. As Craig mentioned, we have permitted the primary residence. I've learned a lot about Pinal County in the last couple months that I really didn't want to know, but I went to help Mary because I've got some background in dealing with people, dealing with problems, and in a background with construction, and I felt that someone needed to step up and help. One thing that I did find, 1986 was the date that Pinal County established the building permit process in the county. Prior to 1986, they didn't require a permit. Two of the dwelling units that were on her property, one having been removed at this point, and the other that Mary lives in, predated that 1986. But in the view of the county, they were non-compliant. I agree with the county that there was a shade structure that was put up, and after digging into the permitting process, required a permit, and we are working on the process with the county for that. I've got some exhibits that I've brought for you guys, and I would like to walk through a little bit of the timeline on before you make a decision on today's, whether to continue.
Can you speak to the microphone, please?
Thank you. Whether to continue out to August, whether we continue or not, whether we vacate the judgment based on the appeal hearing today or not, doesn't stop us from needing to continue to work with the county on addressing any and all issues. I want that to be clear. But I also want to bring up and talk about why we're here for the appeal and some of the ordinance violations that have taken place that should grant a vacate of the judgment, should request that the supervisors set aside the fines and refund fines paid. And we will, of course, continue to work with the county. I've been very grateful to deal with the managers in code enforcement, in planning and development, in the hearing office. I think last week we had a meeting with 5 managers of 5 different departments, and it's been good. We've made a lot of progress. If I can give this, I'll just run through just a number of details to have consideration.
Chairman, if I can ask legal if it is okay for me to accept the documents.
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, they're not part of the record, and so typically you do not accept them. However, testimony is permitted at the hearing. If there's a continuance and they want to submit something supplemental so that the county has the opportunity to review it prior to the hearing so they're prepared as well, that would be appropriate.
All right, thank you. So not at this, what I'm hearing is not at this time.
Many are a part of the record. It's just going to give the supervisors the ability to look at those pieces that are a part of the record. And
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Kavanaugh.
would it be appropriate for the presenter to give these items and ask that they may be made part of a record? I think that's been done in this forum previously.
Okay. That would be great. And part of why I have some of this is that at the original hearing, we brought some information to the hearing that was not allowed to be presented, as a judgment was made before information was conveyed with regard to two of the counts.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. I think we need to have a legal decision on, I think the
Mr.
process.
McGuire, yes. Can you explain the process, please, one more time?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Because it's a hearing, both sides need to be informed of the information that's going to be provided and provide an opportunity for them to prepare for the hearing. So in light of the fact that the county attorney's office has not seen what's going to be presented today and that there's a continuance motion potentially, there's the opportunity for the applicant to provide that information to you, for the county to see it, and for any kind of rebuttal to be prepared prior to the time you get to the next hearing. But I don't think it's appropriate for it to be submitted today without having the county have the opportunity to see it first.
All right, thank you. I'm seeing attorneys all mumbling in the background. So Mr. Cameron,
To the board.
please speak to the. Excuse.
To the extent that I think a lot of this may be stuff that's in the record, I have not reviewed this. However, I'm willing to waive the requirement to disclose it to allow us to get to the bottom of this as they see fit.
So
Appreciate that.
we're okay. So go ahead and please give it to the county clerk. Thank you. Or to the clerk of the board.
And I'll try to walk through this pretty quickly. On Exhibit 1, we've got the hearing notices that were sent out by mail and posted on Mary's property for the original hearing. It was troubling to me that they had the hearing date, but no time for the hearing for her to show up. It had the hearing date and the location. I noticed this when I was asking her where and when we needed to be, and I asked her to send me pictures of the documents to tell us what time we needed to be there. And I had two different copies that had date and location, no hearing time. I actually looked into your ordinance and found that, according to the ordinance, that was legal. It requires date and location, but that's bothersome. I included titles and registrations of vehicles because it was alleged that Mary was running a storage business, and mind you, because she had no primary residence in the eyes of the county at the time, she wasn't allowed to park and store her own personal stuff there unless it was related to horses, because she had suburban ranch property. Primary use is suburban ranch, horse related. So vehicles or trailers that weren't horse related would have been in violation. We have established primary use at this time. I've got a letter number 3 that's a next door neighbor affidavit that was attesting that he did not ever see Mary renting out her RV trailer, which was alleged, and didn't see her ever boarding horses. She never ran a horse boarding business. There was testimony in the file presented by the county that said Mary had told them, code enforcement officer, that she was not running a horse boarding business, and they believed her, but they said from the road they could not see into the horse barn, and therefore they maintained the allegation that there was a horse boarding business going on. They also showed that there was an LLC tied to a name of Santan Mountain Ranch. And she had a sign at her gate that said Santan Mountain Ranch. I have brought up that, I don't know, history tells me that for about 250 years in our country, ranches have been putting the name of their ranch out at the gates of their property, whether they have or do not have an LLC. Her property is not owned by an LLC, and just for a little bit of informative review, I looked up, there are about 400 plus LLCs in Pinal County that have ranches or ranch in their name. I don't believe that that shows anything with regard to whether or not she was running an illegal horse boarding business, which she was not. She did board one horse in the time that she's owned the property, and that was one that was brought by the sheriff's department, found on the road, homeless, and she stored that horse until the sheriff found the owner, unpaid. In the transcript from the hearing, affidavit number 4 shows just some of the ownership records of the horses that were on the property, are on the property. Those are horses owned by Mary. She's got 4 horses currently on her property. She's got a 16-mare horse stall barn, but none of her horses have been living in her horse barn. In the hearing, Code Enforcement Officer, page 3 of the transcript, says that before she went out to inspect the property, there was mention of a manufactured home that had not been permitted on the property. Before conducting my inspection, I conducted a search which showed that there had not been any permits applied for or obtained on this property. That statement bothers me a good bit, as in your file you'll see number 5, affidavit number 5, or exhibit number 5 is the permits approved and paid for and paid to be extended to Pinal County, issued permits that Mary applied for and issued in 2018. She also paid the fees to extend those permits. Those permits were for the removal and the replacement of a manufactured home, double-wide, and that double-wide did not come and complete the permit and close it out. It closed out incomplete. But the statement that bothers me is that it was stated, it made Mary look like a rogue who had no intention ever, never to be compliant with the county. It says, so I would ask that you look at those permits and you decide whether she ever applied for and issued permits. And I'm not talking about the recent ones. Those are the ones that expired. Judgment was made January 13th. After hearing part of the information regarding count 1, judgment was made on 3 counts. The judgment form was given, and that would be Exhibit 6. Judgment form was given, and we got back to drop Mary off at her house. And I said, we're going to have to figure out how we appeal this. And it says on the front of that judgment form, it says appeals information is on the back. In the process ordinance 24.1 for the rules regarding the hearing process in Pinal County, 24.1 says, the decision shall contain a written notice of the right to appeal. And it says on the front of that notice, that judgment notice, it says the appeals information is on the back of this form. The back of the form was blank. So we waited 9 days, received another judgment notice in the mail. The back of the form was blank. At that point, I called the county manager over the code enforcement and asked them how I could find the appeals information. And I was notified that she had 15 calendar days from the date of the judgment to file for an appeal. Now, the second quandary I had with the judgment was that the hearing officer signed as the judge and dated the judgment on the 12th of January. Our hearing was on the 13th. That was troubling. Second form that came in the mail, signed and dated 12th of January. Judgment made 12th of January. Hearing was on the 13th. We had 15 calendar days to appeal from what notice? From the 12th? From the 13th? From 9 days later when we received the second notice? From when we called and got notification from the manager that we had 15 calendar days? So we filed it within 15 calendar days of the 12th. January 26th, we filed the appeal. Now, you guys saw me a month ago, and until we filed a memorandum for appeal, and the clerk of the board kindly printed out all of the rules of the ordinance, I was unaware that the hearing office had 30 calendar days to submit the packet to the clerk of the board once the appeal was filed. Calendar day becomes pretty important. What's the definition of a calendar day? It's a 24-hour period beginning at midnight, ending at 11:59 p.m. When does that count start? When does it end? We were late, and that's why we saw you last month, because you were giving us an exception to extend the filing date for the memorandum to the 15 calendar days. We filed it on the 12th of April. But that's when I found that the hearing office had taken 61 calendar days to file the appeals packet to the clerk of the board. Rule 27.1 or 27.5.1 says, upon receipt of the notice of appeal, the hearing office, the clerk shall, within 30 calendar days, prepare and transmit the record to the clerk of the Board of Supervisors. Remember, I said, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Right? Last month. But we did file the memorandum, filed it on the 12th. We're here now for the appeal. Exhibit 9 was pretty exciting. In this whole process, feel like a little bit of a soccer ball as we are dealing with different departments. The day after the appeal was filed, Mary received, it was mailed out the day after the appeal was filed for this, the hearing demand for the permitting process from the other department at Pinal County. That process is postponed out into June at this point. But the exciting part is number 9 in that process. We've continued to communicate, work with the county In fact, when we got the hearing demand for the permitting department, that was scheduled to be April 12th as well, same date as the memorandum was due for this appeal. And I called Christopher and Cisco, and had a discussion with him about trying to help Mary get permitted and into compliance and work with the county. He said if we set up a meeting, came down and talked to him, he could probably boot that if he felt like we could make progress. He needed me to get a letter signed by Mary that gave permission for me to talk to the county. And I got that letter, sent back an email to Chris with that letter, and found out that Chris was no longer working at the county. Christopher and Cisco was no longer working at the county. So I called Paula Molinex, who was handling his cases, and we continued to work forward. Came down permitted. As you see, number 9, we got a permit applied for on Mary's non-compliant building that predated 1986. In fact, the best that we can establish off of records was that building was there prior to the 1974 double-wide mobile home that was removed from her property, and it was either the primary residence originally and or the auxiliary dwelling unit, but very much predated the permitting process. But to work with the county, we were very fortunate. The county was willing to accommodate, do a site inspection, determine if there were any human life risks, concerns, and allow us to pull a permit on that building and establish primary residency with that building. We pulled the permit and we final inspected it. And you'll see that permit and the signed off final inspection as Exhibit 9 in your packet. I bring up Ordinance 24.1 and 27.5.1, not to put the county on trial, but 2 wrongs, 3 wrongs, 5 wrongs don't make a right. And we're here to appeal because there were things, information that was conveyed that was incorrect. There were decisions made based off incorrect information. We are here because there have been challenges along the way, and we're seeking the mercy of the Supervisors Board to make a decision to right the wrong so that we can continue working forward with the county in this matter. To date, there are 2 other buildings that we are working with the county on, permitting and bringing into compliance. One of those was a small roofed shade structure over an RV that Mary had placed there. That was about 300 square feet of roof. It's pretty sound, and we feel very good about the permitting process on that, and we've been in communication with the county and are hopeful to have that permitted and inspected very shortly. The second building that is in the eyes of the county right now is non-compliant, has been there for nearly 20 years. Mary was not responsible for its non-compliance, and we are still working with the county to resolve that. That's the Mare Motel, a horse barn. It's much like many other horse barns in Pinal County, built with well casing and purlins and built really well by someone back when it was put up, but it did not have a permit. And so we are working with the county. I've visited with 2 engineers this last week, had a site visit with one, in trying to address what the county needs in order for us to bring that to resolution as well. Mind you, Mary bought the property in 2017, and that building had been there for 15 years unaddressed by the county. So it's a lot of information. I would really like to take this load off of Mary at this point and continue working forward with the county. I feel that that is very feasible. And I feel like there are some legal reasons why the county could do that, vacate the judgment, set aside the fines, and refund the fines that have been paid. I appreciate your guys' diligence in this matter.
Thank you. Now, Supervisor Goodman, you have a question?
Yeah, first of all, Mary, you're pretty fortunate to have a gentleman like this step in and assist. I don't think we see that's a rarity in our society today for individuals such as this gentleman right here to come and basically do it free of charge, if I'm hearing it right. And so I commend you for that. And I know how inundating it can get dealing with a lot of these issues. Over the course of my lifetime, I've had problems where I purchased a piece of property that was out of compliance, and I didn't realize that, and so I had to go through some things. And I have a hay barn on my property that was put there without a permit. When I bought the property, I had to bring it into compliance. I think the guy built that barn without, in fact, that's one thing we found out, that he didn't have a permit for it. And it's a nice piece of property. And so, no, I totally get that. But just for clarification, what I'm hearing from you, correct me if I'm wrong, is I'm hearing that you would like us to make some kind of a judgment today, vacating the fines and everything else of that nature, and that you will continue to work with our county staff, our legal, to get the rest of it in compliance. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that is what I'm hearing, or what I'm saying, and I think it would remove a big load and burden, and we're very committed to the cause of moving forward and continuing to work in whatever manner we need to help bring about compliance in the eyes of the county. I agree 100% that, Mary was in the wrong in building a little shade structure that she didn't know she needed a permit on. I was pleased to see the work that was done on it and feel that it will be very easy for it to come into compliance. The county asked us to pursue the primary residence, primary use first in the matter before auxiliary buildings, because you aren't supposed to build a second barn without a house there first. And so we're pursuing kind of one piece at a time. Okay. And I feel like we probably have what we need to apply for the permit on the small shade structure that she had put up in the next week, and then we will continue working towards the big one. And I've had good discussions with many of the members of the management of the county office, building, planning, the director, code enforcement, hearing office. All of those managers came together in a meeting to talk with us about how we move forward, including the county attorney. And I've been very appreciative of this. I'm not an attorney. I'm a redneck business owner. My 12-year-old daughter wanted to buy a horse saddle from some lady down in Queen Creek, and I got drug along, and that's how I got into this whole mess. But sometimes you see the oxen mired in the mud, and you got to go and try to get them out.
Yeah, we appreciate you.
And so, I didn't see a lot of resources that were helping or capable of helping, and it's a pretty dire situation for someone that's on disability, and you know, she's been disabled for a very long time, and the mentally with, you know, some of her disabilities, this is a very overwhelming weight and burden and process, and so yeah, we're going to continue to move forward.
Okay, thank you. That's really all I have.
Supervisor Kavanaugh, you had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I notice on the community development building safety permit application, the property owners Peter Koenig and Mary Dunlap Family Trust. I don't know if that's an issue. I think Mary was issued the citations, not the trust. I don't know where that if that falls as a problem. And then it concerns me that the date of the judgment was the date prior to the hearing. And so, as well as the hearing officer definitely had inaccurate information about the no permits ever being issued. So those are concerns to me.
Right. And Supervisor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is more of a policy. I think that the county really we need to get our arms around these situations. This is not the first time that my office dealt with something similar, probably 6 years ago or so, out towards the Stanfield area. And my understanding that ag buildings on agricultural type properties, and I don't know where those dividing lines are, don't require permits, that if it's ag use. And the whole thing about the shades was a very similar thing that I've faced in the past. And to drag an engineer out, well, it hasn't fallen down in 20 years, so I don't know where the real risk is here. So I guess this board needs to come up with a decision. Is it better to continue this and work through the process, or do we just basically vacate the ruling by the hearing officer and let these people go about their way, is really what I'm hearing. Which one will help, and to be selfish a little bit, which one will help this board better going forward? Maybe studying your case is one of those that does benefit us to better understand what the public is facing out there. I mean, I was a building inspector, so I have a whole kind of other view about a lot of this stuff that probably doesn't align with the governance, and so it's a challenge for me to pass judgment on some of this stuff.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Webster. Thank you, gentlemen. Ms. Koenig, did you care to speak?
Sorry.
Do you care to speak?
I don't think I could say anything.
You couldn't top that. Okay.
Yes, sir. I think he's done.
Okay, thank you. I just had a notice here that you wanted to speak, so I wanted to make sure.
I'm sorry. I didn't know.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Cameron, did you care to come back to the podium?
As the appellee, I just want to say the reason we're here at the Board of Supervisors level is we've already been through the process with the code compliance officers, with the hearing office, and a lot of what has happened here has happened since the hearing office has made its decision. And I appreciate them moving forward and the progress that they've made. The status here today is whether or not the board, the hearing office, abused their discretion in finding that at this point, count 3 was appropriately found responsible for and a fine set. Now, I do understand some fines have been paid, and I don't know those numbers at this time, but the fines owed would be reduced to the 1 count, And prospectively, if they continue to make progress in the future, that may be dismissed also, so there would be no fines imposed at all. Any fines paid would be returned. So it's up to you in that regard.
Okay. Does the board have any other questions, comments? Can I ask for a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that this board dismiss all 3 counts and return the fees and fines to this lady.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. The 3 opportunities for the board are either to affirm, to reverse, or to vacate. So I believe that motion would actually be a motion to vacate the remaining counts. Is that count 3?
Okay. So would you like to?
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll restate my motion to vacate the remaining count 3, and then it would be appropriate to return fines and fees along with this motion? Do we have the power? No, it's not appropriate. That's not my question. Can we do that? We have the authority. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor, the board's authority is to modify penalties imposed as long as the penalties are within the amount set by code. We've generally treated that as long as the penalty is less than the maximum set by code. So I believe you have the authority to refund penalties paid to the extent that something's vacated.
So, Mr. Chairman, my motion would then be to vacate the remaining count or all 3 counts as it applies and refund the fees and fines.
Now we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes.
Is it possible to address the upcoming hearing with regard to the demand for the permitting hearing as well? It's still on docket for
That's
June,
not on this
separate
agenda.
department.
That's not this agenda.
Okay.
But thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I sure appreciate your time.
All right. Moving along. Item number 9. We have a hearing, review, and action on hearing officer's decision ZO-21-0060. Linda Olson. I'm looking for James Mitchell.
Yes.
There you are. Hello. Good
Hello.
afternoon. Good morning still.
Yes, good morning. Yes. Come on up, this guy's mine. Okay. Yeah, it appears they're here. I'm not sure which party you'd prefer, Chairman McClure, to address.
I have a speaking request from Linda and Gene Olson. So if you'd care to speak first, and then we'll come back to you.
Sure.
Thank you. Gene Olson, Linda Olson, 6179 East Shiprock. I'm not kind of what do they call it, a lawyer or a speaker. I'm just going to tell you the way I feel. I don't think it's right that I'm getting fined for all this outside storage when everybody around me, 90% of the houses have outside storage. And I don't think it's fair to have fine on a container when you can go a mile radius from my house and there's 10 containers. There's 2 of them right down the street. No one gets fined for those. I don't think it's fair. So I don't think what they're trying to fine me with is fair. And if I will comply to anything you guys want to make everything fair, that's what I feel.
Okay, thank you.
Or is there not one more thing, sir? I would like a way to change the law so we people out there, we live in a country, we don't live in town. There's all these storage containers, and if they're painted up correctly, made them look like a building, which they are a building, why can't we get a permit or something to, let's say the right word, make this possible? Is there any way we could change this?
That's a permitting issue.
So we have to get into a permitting.
Go ahead. I'm seeing smiles. Go ahead.
Ordinance, that's an ordinance.
Mr. McCoy.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that discussion is not agendized for today. It would actually be a modification of your zoning ordinance. There's an entire process for going through that you all would then weigh in at the end.
Okay. We have to work through a zoning issue. Permitting.
Who do I go to do that?
Mr. McGuire, do you care to answer that?
Mr. Chairman, to the citizen, the Planning and Zoning Department, whoever the liaison is, contact them and they'll talk to you about what you would do to apply for a zoning text amendment is essentially what this is.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mrs. Olson. Linda, did you care to speak?
Just want to say that I feel that this infringes on our rights as Americans. I understand that there was a neighbor behind us that complained or witnessed something at the last hearing. And my direct point to him was, if you had a problem with something on our property, come to us and discuss it before going and talking to authorities. You know, I mean, we're all Americans, you know, we're very friendly people, very friendly with all of our neighbors, except for this particular one. And we have tried to accommodate him. He didn't like the view of some equipment that was on our back property, which we have since taken care of. It does take time to come into compliance, and I don't feel like with COVID and everything that's going on, I had major surgery. I don't think we had time by the time the last hearing was to comply.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mitchell, you are there.
Thank you, Chairman McClure, members of the board. This is an appeal by Ms. Olson, the decision by the hearing officer on this matter. There was 4 counts. It had to do with a residential piece of property that was zoned as CR1A residential. A complaint was brought to the code compliance about scrap metal and debris on the property. An inspection was done, and in addition to the scrap metal and debris and wood, it was also discovered an inoperable RV, a heavy truck or a dump truck, and a storage container. So those, and from a period of time starting from March of 2021 up until just before the hearing in January of 2022, there were communications from code compliance with Ms. Olson, and there were efforts to be made to work together to help them to come into compliance with the code. And ultimately, those were not fruitful. And so the hearing happened in January of 2022. And the hearing officer, after hearing all the evidence, which included testimony from Heather Wright of Code Compliance, which, by the way, she's here today if the board is interested in asking her any questions. And it included a neighbor nearby who appeared for that hearing to provide additional testimony to the hearing officer about the items on the property and what it was doing to affect the aesthetic value and the economic value of the home in that neighborhood. So after hearing all that, the hearing officer decided that Ms. Olson was in violation of the code, those 4 counts, and Ms. Olson then appealed, and that's why we're before you today on this. And I provided a memo on appeal for the board to look at, which essentially summarizes what took place at the hearing office and what our position is and how we would like the board to rule and decide this matter.
All right, are there any questions from the board? No question. Supervisor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Olson testified that there are 10 other containers in and around in a mile radius of his house. I mean, are any of those other properties being pursued through through the code enforcement people? I mean, do we know?
That's a good question. I think code compliance might be better suited to answer that question. Okay. If you wanted to hear
I'm
from
just
them.
curious. Are there any others in that general area being?
Good morning, gentlemen
I
of the
did.
board. I'm Heather Wright, Code Compliance Officer for that area. And in inspecting this property on my way to and from, I have not witnessed any other storage containers along that area, nor have I received any complaints of such.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Supervisor Goodman.
And then after me, Supervisor Kavanaugh. In regards to the containers, is there a permitting process in order to have these containers on the property? Did we hear anything about that?
I think you're allowed.
Huh?
Chairman,
They're not even
members-
allowed?
Chairman, members of the board, Paula Mullinex, Code Compliance Manager. In CR1A, cargo containers by ordinance are not allowed. So, and that's been there for a long time. So we have they can apply for a permit. We've tried to help people if they want to get either engineering or whatever, and it basically changes it from a cargo container and makes it into a building, kind of like a site built, but they'd have to get engineering. And we do that with numerous people in that area. They'll actually have 2 cargo containers. They want to put a roof across it. They go out, pay for engineering. They bring that in, and we don't say it's a cargo container anymore because due to the engineering, it's put as a regular site-built structure, and that's accepted by building safety. So we try and offer some remedy, but a lot of people don't want to do that. But by ordinance, no, you can't have a cargo container in CR1A.
So with that, I guess another question I have, if I might, is that was these type of options provided to the?
Yeah, we always provide options to people if they communicate. A lot of the problems are people either won't communicate or it's an expensive option. So they would have to get that, and they're not prepared, which I understand, to put that kind of money into it.
Okay.
But, yeah, we offer these.
But you're telling me that that particular offer, in order to, because my understanding is we just want to bring them into compliance, right?
Correct. That's
and
why.
And so providing them with these types of options should be one of our main things as code enforcers. That should be, when they are out of compliance, these are some options. If you want to keep the container, what do you want to do here? You're going to need, these are some of the guidelines that you need to do to bring it into compliance.
Always. Our main focus is voluntary compliance. And if you'll notice, most of the cases that come to appeal to you have either been over a year, 2 years before they get to you. So, yeah, those options are always made available to the owner. I've even had the permitting folks come to me that are the zoning part of the permit and say, oh, these are cargo containers, they're not allowed. And then I bring it to them and say, no, there's been included engineering, and we do allow it with the engineering because we don't view it as a cargo container. So, yeah, we make, especially up in the Apache Junction area.
A couple questions, but Supervisor Kavanaugh, you were first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the county management team and our staff have had discussions about making storage units lawful just as they sit. So that may be in the process. And you talked about getting an engineering, it's costly. Well, we have, I think, a fine imposed of $3,000 here. Mm-hmm. It's my opinion that, well, I'll hold off on my opinion.
Okay, Supervisor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What do you want engineered? I mean, I'm looking at a steel box that you couldn't destroy with a bomb, and so really, I mean, logistically, just think about that. I mean, now, I understand if you want to put a roof over the top of it, those, I'm just going to say trusses, would come with engineering, and whatever you support that with would have some kind of engineering. But, I mean, seriously, to ask somebody to get engineering for a steel box that you could throw off a cliff and it wouldn't even know, it would look the same. I mean, we have to really think about what we're asking here, and it's an expense that you can find is a real burden to these scenarios. So, again, this goes back to a policy that probably needs to be discussed in length in another venue and agendized differently. So, but my question really is, are you asking somebody to give you an engineered stamp that this metal box won't fall down?
No, the whole purpose of the engineering is to give them a Band-Aid, because the ordinance, it's not policy, the ordinance actually states cargo containers are not allowed in CR1A. In our attempt to help people, what we have to do is to change that from a cargo container and get it to the point that it is what would be an on-site shed. And the way to do that is to get engineering, just as a cargo container is not allowed as a primary residence. However, people want cargo container residences. So we have them get engineering, and basically the engineering is what has taken the liability to say, this here is, and they put everything into it so people can convert it to a primary residence. If this is something, CR1A is viewed as more of a residential zoning. Cargo containers are not allowed in CR3, other areas. If we just allowed people to put a cargo container there and not write them up, we would be violating the ordinance and putting our stamp of approval on it. Again, trying to get voluntary compliance, we are trying to work with building safety to give people options other than say, well, you've got to remove it because the ordinance says so.
Okay. I get where you're at with that statement. Let me ask one other question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any zoning in which I could bring a cargo and set it down?
Absolutely.
Okay.
GR, SR, SH, the rule zonings, you can have cargo containers. We put a limit based on acreage that you can have.
Okay.
Absolutely. CR1A is just, it's like a rural residential zoning, and that has had, with the ordinance update in 2011, I believe is when it came about,
Okay.
they were restricted from that area.
Okay. And, but you couldn't ask for a temporary use permit or a conditional use permit for that container on that zoning, that CR, what did you say?
CR1A.
Mm-hmm. CR1A. So we
Again,
don't have a path to be able to do a temporary or a special use or anything like that?
Not in direct violation of the zone. I mean, that's something with the zoning update that if the board wants to review and look at, this is the opportunity to do it, but in the residential zones,
Okay.
in CR3 subdivisions, we just don't allow cargo containers.
Okay, you're helping me understand, because there are zonings in which they are allowed.
Yes,
Okay.
there are.
And
So just out of curiosity, and I'll come back to you. So the engineering that's done on a cargo container or the process to get it to be able to be used as a storage shed, I mean, the engineering is to say, yes, it's a structure that's not going to fall down. Is that correct? Fair to say?
Most of the time, the engineering comes when they take multiple cargo containers and they want to put a roof over it and all that. And that's when the engineering more comes in, is for things like that. They'll have too many cargo containers, even in like GR, other zonings, you're restricted by acreage for how many you can have. So that gives them the opportunity not to remove them. They could, as long as they get engineering on 3 of them, we say this isn't 3 cargo containers, now it's 1 building. And I mean, some people would like to stack them and do all kinds of things, but we have to have the engineering to prove it is an okay building with the way they've modified it.
Okay, so 1 cargo container. So what makes it possible to have it on that property as a shed? Paint it? As
No,
neutral?
paint. What we have done is to allow people to side it and put a roof over it, because basically CR1A, people that are in that area, in CR1A, you can't have a manufactured home in that area. They did not want cargo containers. So we try and work with people to say, okay, if you want to make it where it doesn't look like a cargo container, and that's even stretching our ability, to be honest, because we probably shouldn't even be doing that. But we do it to try, again, voluntary compliance to try and help people.
So you have to hide it, essentially. Okay.
Essentially,
Okay.
yeah.
Supervisor Surdy, did you have a question?
Yeah, are there photos available, and is it appropriate to show in a public setting like this?
It should be in your packet. There should be photos that are included in the packet that you received.
Got it here.
Do you have that, Natasha? Okay.
Excuse me, sir, I have a recent photo, if you wish to see it.
Well, I think, okay, hold that thought for a few minutes. So the other issues on this property have been taken care of, though. The outside parking, the vehicle parking, and the metal has all been removed. Is that?
Heavy
It's
trucks.
gone. So the only issue that we really have left is the storage container. Is that correct?
That is true. Chairman McClure, our understanding is that all the items are still on the property. I believe code compliance went out just this week to do an inspection, and all those items remain on the property.
That's a way old photo. That's way old. Almost old. Okay.
What are the dates of these photos?
Usually it's at the bottom. It's not on there.
January.
This shows January on the paperwork, but what are the dates of the photos?
Mr. Chairman, there's a
Supervisor
time date
Kevin.
stamp that says 5/10/21 on the photo that I'm seeing.
Wow. Okay, I got glasses on, but I can't see that. Where?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at a different photo.
Oh, okay.
Different screen.
So these are a year old? Is that what you're implying?
4 months.
21.
5 of 21. That's a year.
Okay.
There we go. 5/10/21. Okay, so those are a year old. And are there recent photos other than Mr. Olson's?
We always provide to the county attorneys within the week of the appeal. We get photos over to their office, so they should be included in there, and it would have been this prior week that they were taken. But I could have Heather Wright come up to address when she went out there and took the photos.
All right.
And Chairman McClure, I do have photos from this week's inspection. I don't believe they're included in the packet because the rules limit this hearing to what's on the record at the hearing. But I do have, if the board would like, I do have photos from this week's inspection.
I'd like to see them because if we're going to make a judgment on this.
Should we ask counsel? Should we ask counsel?
Mr. McGuire, is it okay if we share these photos?
Mr. Chairman, much like the
previous
prior case, the rules say that it's on the record. So that the testimony before you should be what's on the record before the hearing officer because you're sitting in an appellate capacity. So it's very much like your prior case.
Let's see the pictures. I'll pass them. Just hold for a second.
If I could see those real quick. I do have another set here. I just handed them to Mr. Olson here so he could look through them, but
Hand them to Natasha, please.
Where do I get this permit to cover me? Okay, because I was never made aware that I could do this.
From what I'm seeing here, if I might,
Go ahead, Supervisor Goodman.
is there more than one container on this property?
No, sir.
What is that? Is that fencing along there then, or, I mean, it's got a 10 fencing and then,
That's just fencing, sir.
looks like a heavy-duty gates right here.
Exactly what it is.
Yes, sirs. In the photograph, it will demonstrate from the southern view of the parcel. It has a very high fence that appears to be made of sheets of corrugated metal that have been either painted or patinaed. And the storage unit, storage container, is incorporated within that fence.
And then the RV that's in the background there, it looks like it's had some damage to it.
Yes, sir. That can be seen from both south of the property, from Roundup Street. Can also be viewed from immediately northeast of the property on Shiprock. It appears to be quite heavily damaged.
And then I'm looking at one here that looks like there's a truck that's there
Yes, that is the dump truck. That was
that we saw previously.
yes, it was previously located in the southeastern or near the southeastern portion of the parcel. And now it is in the southwestern portion of the parcel.
And then this is behind the house.
Yes, that is the southern view from Shiprock.
Okay.
I'm sorry, my mistake, from Roundup Street. I apologize.
Yeah. Okay.
So it would appear that within the week that much of this debris is still there.
From what I can see, yes, sir, you are correct.
All right. So, Mr. McGuire, what's our option here?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you have the opportunity to affirm in whole or in part, reverse in whole or in part, or vacate and remand back to the hearing officer for further proceedings.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, Mr. Kavanaugh.
to the question for the Olson family. You want to step to the microphone?
I will.
So you're looking at potentially a $3,000 fine. You've been fined. I don't know if you paid that yet, but
I have not. I have all my vehicles are licensed.
well,
And they tried to get me for outside storage on a vehicle is not appropriate, I don't think.
there's
People
a
have one
few of
car.
them, but do you have a plan to come into compliance?
Oh, definitely.
And how long would it take?
Oh, probably a week.
Okay.
So if we allowed another week, or 2 weeks, let's say, you'd be able to
Thank you,
get
sir.
this taken care of?
Done deal.
Say 2 weeks because of the holiday.
Okay. Supervisor Goodman, you had a comment?
I would suggest 30 days. It would give him ample opportunity to get whatever needs to be cleaned up. And, a lot of things could happen in a 2-week period. Number one, there's a lot of stuff here that I'm seeing that is going to take some help. I'm an old guy, and I need a crew to come and help me with some of my stuff just to move some of my things. So it's probably going to be.
I got rid of most of it already.
Okay.
In the
But
last
anyway, I'm
week.
saying
Within the last 2 weeks, I got rid of a lot of it.
that's just a suggestion for me. Give them plenty of time to get it done.
Yeah, I think nobody really has a problem with cargo containers. It's just the other debris.
But the cargo container is not allowed unless you cover it up.
I know, but
So
that's been going on for 20 years in that whole area with, yes, allowed. It can be an acre and a quarter, but not an acre.
But it's the actual zoning
and
that's
it's
the
smaller,
issue.
and can they be screened? And
all right.
Chairman?
So,
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Supervisor Miller.
Just real quick, I'm looking at the calendar. The next Board of Supervisors meeting appears to be the
June
8th of June.
Yes,
So that might be
that would be good. We could continue to June 8th.
Yeah.
Can I get a motion from someone here?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we continue this matter to the June 8th regular session.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Hearing none, the item is continued to June 8th.
Thank you, sir.
Item number 10 is a hearing and review action on appeal hearing officer's decision ZO-08 or 08-18-015. I'm seeing presenter Scott Johnson.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Scott Johnson from the County Attorney's Office. This is an appeal, like the last two cases, from the hearing officer's decision. In this case, however, the appellant is represented by the Rose Law Group. Omar Abdullah is their attorney. Jordan Rose is here today. We've conferred, and I did have a conversation with Mr. Abdullah as well, and I think everybody agrees to reset this or ask the board to continue this until September, until the first board meeting in September. There has been movement on that as early as yesterday, and part of the problem with this set of parcels were some roadway and easement dedications, and there's been some movement on that as close as yesterday, and I think there's some submittals that the appellant would like to submit to the county with regard to that as well. So again, we've conferred, we agree that the first hearing in September would allow them ample time to do that, and I think at that time then either they will have come into compliance and we can maybe dismiss the case, or if not, they haven't, or if the county feels that they haven't come into compliance, they can, reactivate or relitigate their appeal at that time. So we do feel that the continuance is appropriate at this time.
And that's till September when?
The first board meeting in September, I looked at the calendar, and I think there's a regular session set for September 7th.
That is correct.
September 7th. Okay.
So that would be our request.
That would be your request. Can I get a motion, please, from anyone?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we reset this matter for,
continue until
I'm looking for the
September
number. Is
7th.
it item 12?
Item 10.
Item 10, excuse me. Continue or reset this item 10 for September 7, 2022, regular session.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none. Continued until the 7th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I have a request for a recess for 5 minutes. We will recess for 5 minutes. This is a discussion approval of a lease between Pinal County Landlord and Future Forward Foundation. Presenter is Joe Ortiz.
Threw me off for a second.
I know. I was like, that didn't look like Joe. Sangita, I was like, whoa, wait. I'm trying to make sure I'm reading the right one.
Good morning, good afternoon, Chairman, Board of Supervisors, Joe Ortiz, Pinal County Public Works Deputy Director. Public Works staff is recommending the approval of the request for a 2-year lease with Future Forward Foundation Incorporated. This is a Arizona nonprofit corporation Future Forward plans on continuing the use of property located at 94 West Butte Avenue, Florence, Arizona. The use would be for community education and administration for food growing and distribution program. This action does not require a public hearing or auction per statute, but it does require a public advertisement for once a week for 4 weeks, consecutive weeks. And that was completed, and we are in compliance with that. There was no outside interest, and one more consideration. For approval, it needs unanimous consent.
All right, thank you. Does the board have any questions? Seeing, hearing none, may I get a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve item 11 as presented.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you.
Mr. Ortiz. And I'm going to adjust the agenda a little bit because we have a time constraint. We'll move to item 18, which is a public hearing on a proposal to incur long-term financing. I have presenters Angie Woods and Mark Reeder.
Mr. Chairman, I know Mark's in the building, and I think he's making his way down. I don't think he was aware we were going to move it. So he'll be down there, I think in a matter of minutes. I can let him know.
Yeah, if you would, please.
Will do.
But Ms. Woods can come hang out if she says you're a presenter. I mean, if you want to do anything, I don't know. It just says, it's got your name on there, so I figured you're doing something.
Chairman, all I would have done this morning is to introduce Mr. Reeder. So.
Oh, hey, that works. Okay.
Thank you.
And can you just keep talking about him, though, for a while till he shows up? Thank you. Were you successful in finding him?
He'll be right in.
Okay. This is where the band plays for a few minutes and kind of. Dun, 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 dun. Here we go. Mr. Reeder, how are you today? Sorry to throw you off schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for moving me up. I appreciate that. I know you've had a long meeting. We have a public hearing, as mentioned. I have a hard copy. Would you all like a hard copy real quick? Or?
Sure, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, give them to Natasha. She'll.
Okay. Thanks, Natasha. I don't know if you were going to be able to bring this up, Natasha, but Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good morning. We have a statutory required public hearing. Thanks. A statutory required public hearing. We've been through this with you before, if you remember, as it relates to any county in Arizona who may contemplate the issuance of some form of a debt obligation, whether that be for public infrastructure or whether that be for an economic development project. We're required to have a public hearing, and I'm going to walk you through the slides and then address any questions that you might have. So with that, this is pursuant to what we call 11391, and counties are required to have the public hearing and provide, as it says there, the need for the financing, the need to use long-term financing to accomplish the project, whatever the county may be interested in doing, and discuss all the available options, which I'm going to walk you through here in a moment. And then in conjunction with the hearing, the board will receive oral and written comments. I think there are a few written comments that Natasha was going to walk you through at the conclusion of my presentation. Have some public policy objectives here. Again, this is for a potential economic development project that you're familiar with. And it's the purpose would be to acquire land or interest of land to be leased and to be used for economic development purposes, for future industrial manufacturing, distribution, or other similar activities and project. Such lease will include provisions for the purchase of such land by the lessee or the user as soon as within 4 years. The lessee or the user will be responsible for any improvements to the land, including the site utilities. In accordance with Section 11254, provide assistance or undertaking improvements, leasing, or future conveyance of the same to spur industrial growth by attracting business and corporate development essentially to the county. So these are some policy objectives, some statutes that we have to follow carefully, and it shows essentially the acquisition of land for various purposes. When a county considers a public infrastructure project or an economic development project, we have a few tools in our toolbox in Arizona. We don't have as many as in other states, but our tools when we consider these types of opportunities would include having a bond election and issuing general obligation bonds, which we know the county is not interested in doing that as it relates to this project. That's a property tax situation that counties do have the ability to do if they wanted to. The second one is kind of a lease, if you will, what we call obligations subject to annual appropriation or certificates of participation, which counties do, but they're more expensive for a variety of reasons. So we're not really at this point recommending that alternative. So we are recommending alternative number 3, which is very similar to what the county has done over prior transactions. The issuance of revenue bonds of the county, essentially where the county pledges its revenues. I'm going to walk you through that here in a moment. It's very common. And then, of course, if a county had the cash and wanted to invest the cash in an economic development or a public infrastructure project, they could, of course, do that. So these really are the 4 kind of options we have in our state with the recommendation of number 3. We shared this with you at another meeting we had a while back. If we do move forward in connection with the revenue bond transaction, this is common for virtually all of our counties in the state, in which they would pledge these revenues, so your local sales tax revenues, as you can see there, had a very, very good year when you finished 2021, about $25 million in revenues. As you can see, then you have about $48 million of state shared revenues that the county receives from the state, but we have to net out the all-tax and the access cost to the county. The state nets that out, so we really have about 31, as you can see there. I'm looking at the 21 numbers, about 31.2 million of revenues, and vehicle license taxes there about 16.3. Sometimes we'll also pledge our PILT revenues. So in your case, you can see there using the 2021 numbers, you have about 72.2 million in pledged revenues, up from 57 million the prior year. So as you know, very, very good year for you, and we know you're working on your budget for next year as well. So those are the standard, what we call basket of pledged revenues in our transactions that we do. This is a sample amortization schedule for the board. You've seen this before as well. We have our pledged revenues in column 2. You can see the 72 million. You can see in column 3 that the county does have other debt obligations outstanding from issuing them over the years for various public infrastructure and economic development projects. And then if you go to column 4, the assumption here is that we would issue somewhere around 116 million. And you can see that we amortize the bonds really over about a 25 to 30 year period. And we're going to do 25 for now, I think, is our estimate. And we're going to issue taxable bonds in which the county would acquire land for an economic development project. So this is an amortization that's just a sample. You can see in column 6 there on this analysis, it appears as if the annual debt service payment would be about $7.7 million per year, and the lessee would make those payments to the county. So it's not coming out of the county general fund, as you all know. You're securing it with your general fund, but the lease agreement, the intergovernmental agreement, the development agreement that you would enter into would have the lessee pay the amount as indicated in column 6. So wanted to kind of share the estimates there. We know these numbers are changing. as the transaction is moving forward. I'm glad to answer any other questions. This is a public hearing required, as mentioned. If the project continues to move forward somewhat expeditiously, and we're just working with the county in that regard, we probably would come back to the county, I think, at the June 22nd meeting is the current estimate, in which we would have the board adopt a resolution authorizing us to go forward with the transaction. So no action today, just a public hearing. And then after that happens, we would market and sell the bonds, close the transaction as outlined herein. So that's really kind of my very brief comments on the 11-391 hearing. I'm glad to answer any questions the board has, and I know that Natasha, of course, has a few comments. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
I have a question from Supervisor Surdy first.
Yes, sir.
I have just some general questions. This is out there, and a lot of folks saw this, and they get sticker shock on that interest.
Yeah.
And a lot of people want to see government run like a business, and I think this is kind of an example of how it could run like a business. Can you give us some examples of where other governments have done this and it's been successful?
Yes, I'm glad to, Mr. Surdy, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. In Arizona, our tools in the toolbox are somewhat limited relative to a government, whether you be a county or a city, assist with an economic development project. But in Arizona, it happens fairly often. I'll give you a couple examples in the event that it's helpful. As you know, Florence, the Merrill Ranch community is an example, if I can use that as a economic development master plan community over, essentially about 6,000 acres that was put together about 20 years ago. That was a municipal bond tool. The city formed that district for the purpose of assisting with the public infrastructure improvements within the boundaries of that 7,000 acres. So that's an economic development entity, if you will, a political subdivision within the town of Florence, within Pinal County, that was put together to help in constructing the public infrastructure that you see out there. So those are bonds that are issued locally by that district through the town in that example. And, there's a property tax levied, of course, that helps pay for the public infrastructure for those people that live within that community. That's one local example, Mr. Surdy. We just recently worked with the city of Phoenix on the redevelopment of Park Central Mall, if you remember where Park Central Mall is. It was one of the first open malls in Arizona. It went into disrepair. It went into a bankruptcy situation, and the city of Phoenix assisted in that economic development project by forming a community facilities district, a special taxing district, to finance a $30 million parking garage that helped aid in the development and the redevelopment of the mall. So those are a couple that come to mind. I hope that's helpful, Mr. Surdy, relative to how our cities, towns, and our counties can, in the right circumstances, put together an economic development project and do it in a very measured and a very thoughtful way, such that there's limited or no risk to the county in this case in the event that you move forward. So I hope that's helpful.
So the alternative on that mall is there would have eventually been blight, right? Talking about the lessee, what happens? This is, everybody wants all these questions answered. If the business that would take something over, that they struggle and go out of business, then what?
That's where, as I mentioned, when we put these projects together, we want to make sure that we limit any risk to our jurisdictions, in this case, Pinal County. And there will be some very significant requirements on behalf of the lessee, because the county in this case would be the lessor, right? You own the land in this case, and the lease payments would go back to the lessee, who would then make the payments, as I mentioned to you. So, very good question. We spend most of our time on this subject matter. We want to, in the event there was a bankruptcy type situation, which is the meltdown scenario, we add lots of collateral. We require lots of collateral so that in the event there was a walkaway type situation, the county would actually have what we would hope would be more value than the value of the debt on the land. That would allow the county to then reposition the situation, sell it off, release it, what have you. But there's the amount of investment that would go into the project is so significant vis-a-vis the amount of the land acquisition that we don't expect that would happen. We ask for letters of credit in certain cases, so we're still in the middle of doing that and making sure that the development agreement that would ultimately be entered into by and between the county and the lessee would be, pretty solid. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Supervisor Miller, I see you over there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark, just real quick, one of the things I didn't see on there, and I'm sure it's a moving target, is an interest rate. Is that, and we know that they are moving, and so there could be some variances to this as this goes forward. Timing will be everything, I think, on that.
Yes.
And so I'm right in those assumptions?
Yes.
Do you know what that interest rate was used to calculate this graph?
Yeah, I don't know if Natasha, who's doing this, go back there. So, we mentioned that this is a taxable bond, and the prices are based on the U.S. Treasury rates that, as you know, change every day. I think the 10-year was 2.95 today when I woke up, maybe 2.90. It's gravitated to 3%. So to answer your question, we ran some numbers the other day. We started at 2, and I think we were out to somewhere in the 5% range, Mr. Miller. So when you average those, when we ran them, we were probably in the high 4s, give or take. Okay. So we've got some wiggle room on this. We are watching the market. The interest rates are gravitating upward, as you all know. And again, those will be conversations we'll have with the lessee, who's very much aware of the moving market as well. So we got some more Fed action in June. We just had a 50 basis point increase, as you all know, I think 2 weeks ago, and we're expecting another potentially 50 in June, and then maybe again in August. Yeah. I don't think they meet in July. So
yeah, and my point is that interest rate will have an effect on that payment back to us on this by the lessor, and we will have these agreements in place before one bond is ever sold. Yes. So, thank you. That's just validating that.
Okay, Mr. Liu, did you have any comment here?
No, Mr. Chairman, just that we, as a county, and as we've done our strategic plan over the years, and even this most recent one, as you all know, it's been one of our highest priorities to foster an economic environment that would create jobs here locally in the county, primary jobs, we call them. So if you notice in this, these are for future industrial manufacturing, distribution, or similar activities, which we know then those types of investments and jobs induce and produce the secondary jobs and all the other benefits for thriving communities. So, so that is one of the reasons why that we would go through a process like this, and we would not, as Mr. Reeder has alluded to, enter into any kind of arrangement that doesn't have a high ROI for the county and a high level of protection for the county's assets. In a situation or deal like this, there would be no county tax payer-funded money that would be expected to pay this. So the person on the other side, company on the other side of the agreement, would be the ones that would be paying all of this debt service and all the interest related to it and the principal payoff when that time comes. On the 22nd that Mr. Reeder alluded to, which is a target date for a resolution to authorize issuance of bonds, before then and before asking the board to move forward on something like this, we would not be under a situation that we are currently in a non-disclosure agreement. We would have the tire development agreement, the business plan, who it is, what they're doing, and the economic impact analysis that would go along with it before we would ask you to authorize any issuance of any bonds.
Thank you. In reading this, it's 4 years, and then it's a lease for 4 years. That's correct. At the end of that lease at 4 years, is this property purchased?
That's the way the lease would be structured, Mr. Chairman, that at the end of year 4, they would have a balloon payment, if you will, an option of purchase, or else the county would be able to remarket and do something else with that property again.
So does that relieve us of the debt obligation of the bond?
Of the bond? No, not at that time. I mean, we would then work with Mr. Reeder to pay off the bonds. Should that purchase go through at year 4, we then normally work with Mr. Reeder, and we then call the bonds. I'm using the right terminology, right, Mark? Mm-hmm. We then call our bonds, and in this situation, we are marketing it as a 4-year call option so that the county can retire those bonds early.
Okay, thank you.
That's right.
Are there other questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Kavanaugh.
Thank you. I heard you say that, Mr. Reeder, that there's no or limited risk to the county. Why wouldn't your company go directly to the company if they're a great credit risk? It seems like we're kind of the co-signer on the loan. What would be the problem with going direct to the company and offering them the money to buy the land?
Probably nothing would preclude us from doing that. I think the benefits of, in terms of their business model, as I understand it, they're interested in the land acquisition component of this and the related leaseback because it helps them with their business plan and their business model, and kind of creates a win-win economic development project. So it's really, I would say at this point, and Leo and Chris can help me out with this, it's really a negotiation with the county relative to the economic development project that they find attractive as it relates to their business model.
Are you familiar with Rivian?
Yes, a little bit.
So I just read an article about their impending doom, and the state of Illinois kind of did the same thing, where they invested heavily and got bonds and so on, and now the taxpayers, looks like they're going to be on the hook for this. So that's my concern about, is it appropriate? In this instance, we're not redeveloping a mall. It's not a blighted area. And is it even appropriate for us to be involved in sort of a private transaction, the facilitator of a private transaction using taxpayer funds?
Yeah. I don't know a lot about Rivian. I know as it relates to the counterparty or the other party in this transaction, which, as you all know, is confidential at this point, that they're one of the requirements that we spend a lot of time with them on and require them to do is to ensure that they have appropriate capital, the appropriate capital base to, execute their business plan, to build what they're going to do for a win-win situation. So I think in this particular case, we're very confident in that business model, in the liquidity, in their capital position to go ahead and execute. So,
but you're not confident enough to loan to them directly, right?
I'm not saying that we wouldn't do that, but because the conversations have been held relative to the economic development structure with the county, because I think that helps them in terms of their business model. But that doesn't mean that they couldn't go out, of course, and raise capital on their own relative to the acquisition of land. They can certainly do that, would be my guess. I think they, as I understand it, they find this to be very attractive as it relates to their expansion plans and business model execution.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? All right, this is a public hearing, and I'll open the public hearing. I have Pam Burke, I believe, wishes to speak. Then I'll have ex-Supervisor Todd House come up and speak. Oh, former. Yeah, you're not dead yet. Okay.
Good morning, Chairman and the Board of Supervisors. I'm here representing quite a contingency of people from the Gold Canyon area in lieu of the situation we had last year of the acreage in the Gold Canyon area. They're a little leery about handing money out for economic development. We are not against economic development. We're not against the county using their resources for economic development. Not. I know you're under an NDA, so you can't exactly expose exactly what's going on with it, but let me plant a few bugs in your ears so you understand where people might be worried or concerned. You know, $250 million, that was the entire budget for Pinal County back in 2007, 2008, pretty close. This is a huge acquisition. Now, I'm understanding much more since they came down than a 4-year. Sounds like it's a 4-year deal. I have a pretty good idea what we're talking about, and I will keep it quiet myself. But my point is if it were somewhere else or a different usage, the county has the land. Therefore, would it be exposed to the same zoning issues as anybody else that was coming in? So are they getting away without any zoning issues by the county having the land and them leasing in land? The other issue is, quite honestly, is we want to make sure that it's not going to be something that you might spend the money, get the land, do the deal, and it will fail at zoning because there's enough people that don't want it. There's a possibility. So that's a question that I would like to plant before you because I know for a fact if it were to come the issue in Gold Canyon, we do not want any industrial anywhere in Gold Canyon. And there would be enough people to back that statement. So since coming here, I got a pretty good idea what you're doing, and I have a pretty good idea what it's going for. I feel a lot more comfortable. But I still, at the same right, there are a lot of people that don't understand what I know now, and I wanted to make sure that those questions are answered. I mean, it's a lot of money. We don't want to give you a blank check to spend willy-nilly and then have an idea and have an agreement and everything work forward, and then people just rise up with pitchfork and say no. I mean, you'd have the money. What are you going to do with it? So those are some things that I would say to think about. But if it's what I think it is, there won't be any opposition, and it will be a nice acquisition and a nice addition. So, but coming down here, I didn't know what I know now. So appreciate your time and effort.
Thank you, Mr. Howes. And Pam, would you care to speak, Ms. Burke?
Pam Burks from Gold Canyon, representing Gold Canyon Business Association as a board member, Gold Canyon Republicans. Of course, what Todd mentioned about the approximately 12,000 acres in Gold Canyon is important to us, economically, of course. And we would like to see, and I just want to make one point, the examples that were given about developing a community in Florence and redoing an established business environment in Phoenix doesn't really relate to Arizona State Land Trust, 12,000 acres. And that's right between two big communities. We would like to have some sort of assurance in any resolution that or call it assurance or include an amendment to give ample time to residents in the areas where you may be considering manufacturing, economic development, to be sure that it is this time, opportune for the residents, for the businesses that are there. And we would just like input and a voice and approval or disapproval, but it should be written into this somehow because there's that huge acreage for Superstition Vistas. There's the 12,000 acres. All of it is right in the middle of Gold Canyon. And we just want to know, and I think it would be appropriate. I keep hearing NDAs. That's what sort of did us in the last time, guys. We didn't get a chance to air it, to talk about it, and now we can see Rivian was not a good option. They're falling down everywhere they go. People don't want them. But we were being pushed and told that we wanted it, and we didn't. I came here, spoke to all of you. Never, except for Kavanaugh, did I even get a response by email. We say what we say. You're supposed to be representing us. We're the people. You're supposed to represent us. Not one word or one response from anyone about what we wanted. So I'm just making it known now. It's not going to be something we want in Gold Canyon if you're going to just do a blank slate and do what you want again. It's not going to work for us. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burke. Mr. Revelis, I believe you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Roberto Revelis, resident of the Gold Canyon, representing myself only. And as a longtime resident of Gold Canyon, we had a previous experience past year that should have taught us some lessons. A principal lesson is give the public information as much as can be shared without violating your non-disclosure agreement, because we all recognize that the stability of our communities depend on being able to provide people with livelihood, to enjoy the beautiful surroundings that we claim to be wanting to preserve. And as one who came last year and begged for the process to include greater interaction with the public, I again stress that that need has not disappeared. We all want more information before we commit ourselves through supporting the bond. So again, I stress communications, transparency is very important to us.
Thank you, Mr. Reveles. Are there any others that wish to address the board? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry, yes. What did I do now?
I believe there were some comments that Natasha was going to read into the record also.
I'm sorry, okay.
Thank you, Chris. So not going to read them into the record, but for the record, I wanted this on the record that the board is in receipt of 6 comments received by email. Each one of those comments are in opposition. They are from Julie and Dave Jenkins, Phil Todd, Susan Holhaman, Maria Fies, and all are from Gold Canyon.
Okay, thank you. Can I go on now? Thank you. Okay, just checking. The boss is, okay, we've closed the public hearing like that, and this was information only, so thank you, Mr. Reader, wherever you went. All right, and we will now go back to the agenda. Item number 12, which is another public hearing. Discussion approval, disapproval of ordinance number 2022-PZ-039-21. And now, Ms. Dokar, you are up.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and board members. Sangeeta Devkar, planner with Community Development, going to be presenting the next case. The name of this project is Village at Pecan Grove, and the case number is PZ-039-21, which is a rezone and a pad overlay for the same, which is PZ-PD-039-21. Should I go back? So the proposal is a rezone for 14.28 acres from industrial buffer zone to multiple residence zone, allowing development standards for a single-story for lease facility. The pad overlay is for the same area, 14.28, again, to change development standards and approve the multiple residence zone with an amendment to an older pad, which is PZPD 043-03, for a single-story lease housing facility. Location is north of Combs Road, east of Gansel in the Santan Valley area. Tax parcel is a portion of parcel 104-22008Y. Applicant is Sean Lake. Landowner, Desert State Management. The county map shows the location of this project very much in Queen Creek and Santan Valley area, northern portion of the county, shown with a yellow star. The vicinity map now showing the parcel that is proposed in red, and you can see the surrounding zoning. South of this parcel is the town of Queen Creek, Eastern portion is CR3, CR5 on the western portion. Northern is again CR3. Further zoom down area map showing the town of Queen Creek at the southern portion, Combs Road abutting that, and the parcel is north of the Combs Road with a residential development that has already happened along the north and the eastern portion of this, also on the south, which is the Encantera. Aerial map currently showing the parcel pretty much undeveloped, and one can see that it is pretty much surrounded by developed areas all around. There is a project proposal to the eastern portion of this parcel, which is a case coming up shortly after mine. This is the site plan showing the units the way they have been laid out, with a central open space, the amenities, the pool, the community open areas, circulation spaces, and the trails that are within this that connect to these open spaces. The access to this is along the eastern portion of this plan, which is from the Combs Road, and there is an also exit along on the Combs Road. Pretty much straightforward. There are three single-storied options, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom houses. Total number of units is 147. And it does have trails which are part of the open space and recreational plan. This is where the open space plan shown very much in green, showing the connections of these to the central portion. Each of those units would have the access to the central area, which has a dog park, an open garden, and the community utilities and amenities, I would say, that are required for people who would be staying. You can also see the trails that are from the eastern portion and on the northern portion of this site plan. Site plan fencing wall showing the northern and the western walls already being built. And the red lines are showing the walls that would be built by this development, and also showing the access, which is a private access road along the eastern portion. The main entries with a green dot has been also shown. This is the adjacent site plan. Just to give you a perspective, the entry into this is along Combs Road, and to the western is the village at Pecan Grove, and this site plan is the memory care unit. So trying to show that it has access to both sides. One, the main entry, the western portion is the village at Pecan Grove, and this is the other one, which is going to be coming up shortly. Development standards pretty much for multiple residence zone. And they are following all of the standards except for the minimum rear setback, which is 15 feet, and the distance between main buildings as 10 feet as compared to the standards of 20 feet. The site plan close-up shows the existing church to the northeast portion of this parcel, and residential multifamily, which is what this app project is. And the pink site is, again, the other project which would be coming up, but just showing a perspective of the development that has already happened and kind of a location of this multifamily. Some pictures taken north along the Combs Road, looking into the property. East showing the Encantera Drive signal, which is along the Combs Road. Looking south, which is opposite, and to the west of this property. Some final comments. It does conform with the existing Santan Valley Special Area Plan. The site is designated as community center, and it conforms where the multifamily is allowed, and the density is within the range that is expected. So density is 10.29 dwelling units per acre. For 14.28 acres, there are 147 units that are proposed. There is a buffer which is along the perimeter with landscape trails and setbacks as shown shortly in the site plan. Housing type is the community housing options for residents of Santan Valley with actually no responsibility of maintenance. It's a lease facility with 1, 2, 3 bedroom options and a single storied facility. 2 access points with main entry along the east side. Open spaces have the central amenities connected with pedestrian access to smaller open spaces and trails. TIA has been approved with improvements along Encantera-Combs Road intersection to accommodate this development. There's adequate parking provided with 289 spots, with required as 245 for this facility. Some of the spots are open, and some of them they do have the covered parking also. Staff recommends approval with the rezoning case with 2 stipulations and the pad overlay with 14 stipulations, with the removal of step number 5, which was the applicant owner to remove the car wash care facility or station amenity, which was earlier opposed by the staff and planning division. However, after discussions at the Planning and Zoning Commission, we did come to the conclusion that this is going to be maintained by a central authority, and therefore and it's going to be a good community. However, the site plan is going to be coming up for its site plan approvals, and details would be taken care of at that point in time. Open for any questions.
I know. I'm just laughing. Car wash in Santan Valley. We have a.
You never have enough.
So we're just having a joke at someone else's expense. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's see. This is. Does the board have any questions? Supervisor Goodman, I believe you do.
No, I think you've kind of explained it quite well. I think any letters of opposition or anything like that we've seen?
No, we did not receive any letters of opposition.
Okay.
All right.
It is a public hearing.
So I know. So I'm going to open the public hearing like that. Anyone from the public care to speak?
Can we do both? Can we do both? The public hearing 12 and 13 are tied together, I believe, right?
They are. So anyone care to speak to 12 or 13? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing on 12 and 13. All right, and we will move along, and I would ask for a motion on item 12.
So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve item number 12 as presented with, that was voted unanimously by our Planning Commission, 9-0, with 2 stipulations on this particular case in number 12. And so, as presented.
So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. For item number 13, may I have a motion, please?
So, Mr. Chair, and was it stipulation number 5 you said?
That's correct.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we...
Sangeeta, he's referencing the car wash item. That one was removed, right? So the...
It was removed, so it's...
Oh, it's not even in there?
No. So, I mean, it is there. There was a... Basically, it was removed by... It was recommended for removal. However, we kind of... I'm sorry. There's a... It's a misleading.
Still in
it's
there.
misleading. It is there.
Okay.
So it is with 14 stipulations, which includes the car wash.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right, no, you've got her confused now, so I'm still confused then.
So the 14 stipulations that are there for this ordinance includes this car wash.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure. Okay, so can I get
We're ready to move forward?
Yeah, please, I need a motion here.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve item number, which one are we on? 13.
Lucky.
As presented, that was approved by our Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously 9-0 with 14 stipulations.
That's correct.
I'm seeing thumbs up and nods and all that. So I have a motion, I have a second.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen. Item 14. And item 14 and 15 will be discussed together. This is discussion, approval, disapproval of ordinance number 2022-PZ-038-21. Mr. Olguin.
Good afternoon. Chair, Vice Chair, Board. Gilbert Olguin, Senior Planner. I'll be giving you the next two cases I'll be presenting for you. Okay, here we go. So this case that we're about to talk about, this is right next to the project you just heard, the multifamily project that was just presented by Ms. Dioker. This is the Combs and Nicotera Senior Living Facility, privately owned, single-story community providing a combination of 90 total units, including 66 assisted living and 24 memory care units, and it's single level. So the proposal is for 5.93 acres to go from industrial buffer, which is CIB zone, to community commercial C2 zone to allow this type of development. In addition to that, we're also looking at requesting to amend an existing PAD, the Pecan Creek PAD, to change the development standards and approve the Combs and the Cantera Senior Living PAD overlay for this assisted living facility. It's located northeast corner of Combs Road and Nicotera Drive in Santan Valley. The applicant today is InvestCore Development, RVI, Planning and Landscape Architecture, is here as the applicant representative, and they are in the audience. So this map here gives you perspective of where it's at. It's just next to Queen Creek, essentially, in the Santan Valley area. This gives you more perspective. The little red dot, or square, if you will, represents where it's at and all the zonings that are around it. As we get closer, you can see the blue square is the property in question. To the north is property owned by a church worship site, and right next to it is the multifamily we just spoke. Ms. Sangita just spoke about. More perspective, aerial map gives you kind of more of a picture of what's there. But gives you kind of the area to show you all the subdivisions that exist around it and how those uses would benefit from this. Development standards, they're not really asking for really too much. What we use the PAD for, a couple things. Number one is to extend to at least allow 36 feet to allow architectural embellishments. It's a one-story project, won't exceed 1 story. We also use the PAD to essentially lock in senior living facilities, and that's it. That's it. There's nothing else that's going to go in here unless this gets bought up and gets amended down the road. But right now, we're looking at senior living facilities, and that's it. That is focused on memory care and other type uses. And that's what we're using the PAD for on this project. You saw this earlier. This is a map that she borrowed from me, which gives you just the layout of the site plan. 2 ways in, 2 ways out. One of the entry points does line up with the existing multifamily that's right off Cantera Road. As you can see, these types of uses don't really trigger a lot of parking requirements, but they do meet what's required. Plus, it doesn't trigger a lot of activity in regards to that as well, which we feel is a good use because there's always complaints about multifamily and other projects that bring a lot of traffic. This doesn't do that. Seniors are brought to this facility for a specific kind of care, and then they're left there to be treated, or I should say, to be watched over by the staff that works there. So not a lot of traffic impact, not a lot of impact to the area, and a good neighbor for a multi and a church that's to the north. Did confirm with the entity that owns property to the north, and they do plan on, there was some talk about their church coming to the north of this project. As you can see here, as mentioned before, multifamily and church and existing subdivisions that wrap around this. So you can see the project in purple is our project that we're talking about. This is just the broadcast sign that's required per ordinance and per statute. But here's an image of the vacant land, as you can see to the north. This is to the east, shows you the existing traffic light that's there. To the south and to the west. Once again, we're asked to go out to the site to see it in its entirety, take a look at it, and we get a better perspective as to what's going to come in and what's going to impact that area. Access, there will be, as I mentioned before, there's 2 ways in, 2 ways out, 2 driveways on this, as staff asked for, so that will help a lot with how people come and go. As mentioned before, this is a low impact, which is a big consideration for staff when we look at rezonings. How is this going to impact the neighbors? It shouldn't impact it much at all in regards to traffic. Visual-wise, it shouldn't. They're doing a good job on the landscaping that's going to be around this, so it shouldn't impact that either. Quiet little type of use that's going to go there. So this falls within the comprehensive plan slash Santan Valley area plan. It's a community center, so this is a good fit. This is something that's suggested per the area plan. It's located along the arterials as suggested and required. Once again, there's no direct traffic coming right onto Combs, which is a big deal. There's also a large retention area that exists to the north of it, so it's taken up that as part of the project, so that also helps. The PAD amendment seeks to restrict all proposed uses just to the one use we spoke about, which is assisted living. As I mentioned, staff has recommended approval of both applications. We feel this is a good fit for the area. Have not received any public letters of protest or support for this project. So by losing this potential the industrial zone that was there can act a lot like a space for light employment, offices, and some commercial uses. Well, we're going to replace it with the use that's going to accommodate seniors that need this type of care. So for the first application, we recommend, and P&Z also recommends approval to the board with 2 stipulations. For the PAD, P&Z and staff also recommend approval to the board with 18 stipulations. Wanted to make note that number 9, there's been some modifications to this case. Number 9 was taken out. It was kind of redundant, and I'll show you in a second what I mean by that. Number 19 was also taken out and was modified, which by taking out 9, we ended up with 18 stipulations instead of 19 total. So sorry for the confusion. There it is. These lines represent what one of those stipulations was asking for. On the yellow to the north, we asked for landscaping along that side due to the fact that there's already a worship site that's going to go in there. They're going to bring their own landscaping, so the applicant and ourselves felt it wasn't necessary to add additional landscaping since they're already going to have it to the north. We did ask for it around the entire site. We did ask for walls around the entire site except for Combs. Combs, we've got a 50-foot easement that's a retention easement that exists there now, so we didn't ask for anything there besides landscaping. So that's what those revised stibs focus on. And also, I put these in here just to show you what kind of fences are going to be around it. We didn't go with the traditional CMU bricks because it can resemble a negative use. I hate to say it out loud, but like a prison. And that's not what this is. This is a well-developed, good-looking project that you saw earlier. And these types of fences are going to enhance that, make it look better, and make it exist with what's out there. Some more examples of the type of fencing that they could do if they wish to. Any questions for me or for the applicant? He is here.
Are there any questions?
Just one. The property to the north, the church. Have you reached out to them? Do they have any? When are they talking about building or anything of that nature?
They wouldn't give me a set date as to when they were going to build, but I did speak to an attorney that represents them for many cases,
Okay.
Who happened to be here today, and he had mentioned that yes, the church is scheduled. They typically have a trigger point that would cause that to happen. They haven't hit it yet, so that's all he was sharing with me.
Yeah, and this is the other comment I'd like to make is that, you know, this is something that is desperately needed in the area. This is something that I'd argue for a long time. And memory care, you've got that. I think my wife would be happy to hear because my memory is going. This is close to our home, and it's a good place for me to probably reside at some point. But these
we'll
are
come
needed.
visit you, by the way.
Would you come?
Yeah.
I may not remember that, but you come anyway. But the point is that we need to do more of these type of things in our communities. You know, and so I'm a big proponent of this project. So anyway, that's the comment I've got.
Any other questions for staff?
I don't see any hearing, none. This is a public hearing, so we will open a collective public hearing for items 14 and 15. Are there any publics that wish to speak to 14 or 15? Seeing, hearing none, we will close the public hearing, and I would ask for a motion on item 14, please.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make.
I want you to remember what you're doing.
14. I can still read, so I'm okay there. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve item number 14 as presented, and it was approved by the Planning Commission. They recommended approval of 9-0 with 2 stipulations.
Okay, I have a motion, I believe. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. And now, number 15. May I get a motion on 15, please?
You want public hearing? That's all.
I think we did that already.
No, we did. Well, we have to do them separately. We did 14. Now let's do 15.
Okay.
See, look, here we are.
So we still need to do a
We're
public
coming to
hearing.
visit you.
Okay, good.
15.
Okay.
May I get a motion on item 15, please?
You bet. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve item number 15 that was recommended by Planning and Zoning unanimously, 9-0, and it has 18 stipulations.
I have a motion. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Motion 15 or item 15 passes. Thank you very much. We now are moving on to items 16 and 17 as they will be discussed together. Presenters, Mr. Olguin again.
Thank you. Chair, Vice Chair, Board. Gilbert Olguin, Senior Planner, doing this all over again for you for a different case. This one we call Box Canyon Solar. So this project is not too far from here, just to the north, right within proximity here to Florence. The proposals are requesting approval of a rezone for 2,087 acres from general rural to I-3 industrial zoning to accommodate a solar facility and a battery energy storage. The second request is for the PAD that's going to go with this case on the same amount of acreage, 2,087 acres for the Box Canyon Solar PAD. Location, it's about approximately 4.6 miles east of the Salt River Project Able substation, 9 miles north of Florence, 5.6 miles south of State Route 60, and directly adjacent to and west of State Route 79. The applicant is the Arizona State Land Department. They're the owners and the actual applicant is Eric Ellis. Also, Rose Law Group is here as well to help with this case. So this map shows you approximately where it's at. It's right on that corridor 79 going towards the junction. You can see the star that represents the location. This is a vicinity map that shows you the area in question. It's quite a large piece, as mentioned, over 2,000 acres. And I wanted to also show you that there is an entitled property just next to it right there in the greenish-colored square. Caballero, I believe is the name of it. Here's an aerial map that gives you some more perspective. It's been cut up into 3 pieces because of washes that traverse through the property. Another area map to give you more perspective as to the area and how big it is. It's quite large. Each square is a square mile, so you can see this is a huge piece of property. Comprehensive plan. Currently, I went through a whole year process to get this, to take it to the board and also to get it designated as green energy production. It was successful, and so now today that's what we have there. The red dot represents an activity center, so it did cut through that, but they were gracious enough to leave us a swath there that's over 1,000 feet that would accommodate any potential development that may come in the future. Not likely for this location. Zoning, it's currently GR, but the proposed zoning is going to be I3, industrial zoning. And keep in mind, it's state land, so this is a project that has about a 35-year shelf life on it. May be extended in the future, but that remains to be seen. Development standards, there's not a whole lot they were asking for here. They had some modifications, some changes that were applicable, but nothing that was out of the ordinary for this type of development. Their overall site plan, as you can see, it shows the blue areas are all the solar arrays. To the north, they have a possible operation and maintenance building that may come into play. The red pathways you see there, those are washes that traverse through the property. Kind of in the middle of there, towards the north, is right away that they're going to reserve. I believe that's Judd, and the one to the south is the Bella Vista. So, some details at the 300 megawatt solar facility with the battery energy storage. Project substation to be located approximately 1,961 acres. Overall, it's over 2,000. 230 kV generation tie-in line will connect to the project substation to SRP's Able substation, located approximately 5 miles to the west. Approximately 126 acres of the project will remain undeveloped because of the washes. And this was something that our Parks and Rec team was working with them to try to preserve those areas so we won't impact the wildlife that goes through the area. I mean, essentially in the beginning they will be impacted, but this does provide some relief to that. So the county and myself were real gracious they were able to work with us on that. That's a lot of room that they left alone. Site plan, this is another one that just gives you more perspective as to what we just talked about. How it lays out, its true impact, as I told you, it's quite a large piece of property on state land. One thing to keep in mind is their neighbor across the street there is the National Guard, and there has been some petitions to extend the National Guard area where they plan to do additional training. So this would complement that neighbor quite well. One of the things that came up through our discussions is vegetation along this property. Because of its size, people had complained and talked about how you would see, just these array of solar panels and just walls. And so to help mitigate that impact, staff has been working with them and P&Z as well to provide essentially stipulations that would force the owner/developer to provide vegetative screening. We'll read those into the record when we get to that point. But I want to let you know that they have agreed to essentially the whole length of this to do some mitigation to accommodate vegetation. It was real important to the board, I should say to the commission, that this would be unsightly. So they've not only done that, they've also reduced the size of the height of these panels from 15, I believe, down to 6 to 8, correct? Yes. And so quite a bit went into trying to make sure that we could have a 35-year use that wouldn't impact your drive too much. And they showed lots of examples of how you're going to see it, but it's not as visible as you would think. So we were happy about that. Here's an image to the north. As you can see, what's there now, not much at all. Image to the south. Once again, just not a lot. East, vacant land. And to the west. So they're going to add to this. They're going to do essentially an inventory within 40 feet of their property, and they're going to take a look at what's there, and then they're going to fill in the blanks, if you will, as we get more into that comment about the vegetative screening. So the subject site is currently designated as green energy production, and it conforms with the comprehensive plan. The Commission and staff have forwarded recommendations of approval for both applications. The rezoning PUD will have little to no impact to the area. Matter of fact, it's also allowing them, they're going to give us the access needed per required right-of-way for two of the major corridors that they're going to traverse their property, which was huge for us because this is going to also impact that existing subdivision, not just Caballero, but Magma Ranch off to the side. I mean, this is a big deal for us. It's going to help open up that area that has been kind of closed down for a while. So some definite pluses on this project. And as I mentioned earlier, they've agreed to really work with us to get the landscaping done as needed to minimize this visual impact. Another great consideration is that these projects use very little to no water in comparison to homes. They usually have water trucks that come out to wash the actual solar arrays, but aside from that, that's essentially it. They did provide us a decommissioning plan, so this is essentially a document in their ordinance that's going to require them to take this apart and remove it from the property in 35 years. And there's bonding that goes along with that. So having that in place really secures the area and it will allow future development if it ever comes around. Like I said, this project was we were tasked with this project to get it through quickly, but I think at the end we came out with a decent result. And I think the county, from my perspective, staff's perspective, it was a win-win for us. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. We have one stipulation for PZ 00422, and I believe is it 16 total for the second application, which is the PAD. We can talk about stipulations 6, 9, and 14, which have been revised. 6 and 9 were more specifically revised. So just to be clear, the 3 steps you see there, they were revised, but 6 and 9 were revised this morning. I have them in front of me, and we have them here, right? Okay, well, we're ready to get to that point. I know we have a public hearing to open, and we have the applicant to talk to if you wish.
All right.
Any questions for staff?
I believe there's a question from Supervisor Goodman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess the question I have is that I think this is the project where the main power lines to tie into the SRP were moved from the original and further north. Am I understanding that correctly? And this is particular. Okay, good. Further away from some of those subdivisions. And that's okay.
Are there any other questions?
I have some.
Supervisor Sturdy.
Gilbert, you said that the applicant was agreeable to all the landscaping, but I'd heard earlier that they were not. So is that something that the applicant can explain in a bit? Okay.
Okay. I will. Let's see. Are there any other questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll open up. Yes.
The applicant has a presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Applicant, Jordan Rose. Please speak to us.
Thank you. Chair and Vice Chair, members of the board, for your records, I'm Jordan Rose with Rose Law Group, and I'm here on behalf of Bright Night. With me today is Eric Ellis, the Vice President of Development, and Ron Casina, the Chief Development Officer, and Jennifer Hall, the project manager planner in my office. I just wanted to thank the staff and the supervisors and really the planning commission. We're in full agreement. Yesterday, you're right, Vice Chair Surdy, we were having some issues with the stipulation on the screening, and we've just worked with Lester and Brent, your whole team, and Alan, your attorney, to formalize those 3 steps, and we feel very comfortable with those. Alan and Hamachu drafted those, and we're good with what you have in front of you with those modifications. So thank you for spending the last 3 hours that you've been deliberating. We have too with your entire staff, and we appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now, let's see. I will open the public hearing for 16 and 17. All right, is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to items 16 and 17? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and we will move on. There are no other questions from anyone? All right, I'd ask for a motion for number 16, please.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve item number 16.
Sir?
Oh, I'm sorry.
We
Oh,
need
I'm
to
sorry.
read-
Do I need to go back? Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Just wanted to mention that we need to
16
reread.
does have some changes.
That's true. You did have the 3 stipulations. Go
Yes, so for the PAD specifically, not for the zone change, we have to reread stipulation 8, 6, and 14. So if you would like to just move forward on the rezone, and then we can come back to these, that'd be fine.
I'll come right back to you. All right. May I get a motion on item 16, please?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve item number 16 as presented. Then the Planning Commission recommended approval 7-1 with 1 stipulation.
All right. I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Item number 17, Mr. Olguin, please read the 3 stipulations.
Chairman, so stipulation 6 has been modified this morning again, and we're all in agreement. It reads as, landscaping standards will be required for the Box Canyon Solar Project and subject to the review and approval of the Pinal County's Community Development Director. Applicant shall provide vegetative screening on the applicant's property within 40 feet of the property line as set forth in the application, where a project is 300 feet from Highway 79. Applicant shall further provide an existing vegetation inventory plan and supplement vegetation as necessary for screening purposes based on review and approval by the Community Development Director within 40 feet of the property along Highway 79 and along Judd Road. That's number 6.
All right.
Number 8, stipulation 8, revised as, applicant has agreed to provide a 6-foot concrete subdivision walls along north and south sides of Judd Road alignment. These walls will be constructed 100 feet back from the center line of Judd Road and will provide additional screening. Walls will be constructed simultaneously with Judd Road construction, and permits shall be submitted for the wall when Judd Road permits are submitted. And number 14. They're going to put it on the screen there for me. Okay. I have it here. 14 reads, as revised, full street right-of-way dedications, 150 feet, will be made for both Bella Vista Road and Judd Road. In addition, applicant shall provide a minimum of 2 28-foot wide paved access points from Highway 79 to the eastern boundaries of the project at locations as identified in a county and ADOT approved traffic impact analysis or statement that addresses, among other things, access and turn lanes.
Just out of curiosity, a question. Why are there CMU walls on Judd but not on Bella Vista?
Well, we know that Judd is the road that's going to connect to the future subdivisions. And we're lucky enough to get them to provide that. But I don't think that they have I don't know. I can't speak for the traffic engineers for the county, but I don't think they've gotten to the point where how they're going to have that road come through. Because I don't know of any plans right now. That is I believe, a major arterial, but it hasn't been looked at that level yet. We do know that Judd does impact Cabrera, which is that subdivision you saw on the map.
Right. I'm familiar where it is. Okay. Are there any other questions from the board?
So the wall construction doesn't start until road construction starts, which could be 2 years, could be 5 years?
Yes.
Thank you.
That was one of the things that the staff had worked out with them to change it to where it was a little more amenable to them. But we're good with the changes. I believe the vegetation was a big one for P&Z, and they're good with what we talked about.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
I have a question when we're all done. I don't want to sidetrack the whole conversation, but I was curious when you said the National Guard is going to be expanding, that could affect how we handle future things. So, Leo, if someone could let us know ahead of time, what are they planning down there?
All right. Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, hearing none, I'd ask for a motion on item 17, please.
There we go, baby. Oh, okay, all right, there we go. Just read it. Mr. Chair. Why am I always the one that has to take the brunt of all of
Told
this
you, we're
stuff?
coming to visit you,
Okay,
don't
all
worry,
right, all
it's
right.
okay.
Testing you.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve item 17. Is that the one we're on, correct?
Yes.
Okay, item number 17 as presented. A planned area development overlay with the 16 stipulations recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission, but with the modified versions of stipulations 6, 8, and 14 as read into the record.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. All right, thank you. Item number 18 is a public hearing required by ARS Section 11-391.
Mr. Chairman, we already did item number 18. We moved that one up. That was the Mark Reeder item.
Okay, now he can come visit me. That's true. Okay, good point. All right, let's move on then.
That memory thing.
That memory thing has got me today. Okay, how about let's go to 19. Let's do that. Work session, presentation and discussion of general fund status forecast and fiscal year 22-23 budget development. Ms. Woods.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. Always seems I'm in between you and lunch, so I will make this as brief as possible. But before I do that, I have quite a few members from our leadership team across the county here today. They've showed up to be supportive to me, so I want to thank them for staying and being supportive to me. So today's work session item, I want to get some direction from the board. This is a work session item, but please stop me along the way. Let's have some discussion. I would like direction on the property tax rate that I include for our tentative budget, and then any direction that you have in regards to expenditures or revenues that we're budgeting for next year. So starting with revenue forecast assumptions, and this hasn't changed since we last spoke, but I really just want to give you a brief picture of what this looks like and give you some context. So last year at this time I provided this chart, and our property taxes and tax lien sales was 47% of total revenues. This year it's shrunk to 43%. So most of that has been shifted to intergovernmental. That 31% that you're seeing there last year was 30%. And specifically, our state shared sales tax has increased by 2%. So, which becomes, it makes our revenue a little bit more volatile because of the sales tax portion. So we'll keep that in mind in future years of our forecast. We've forecasted very modest growth in those areas. Right now, the sales tax, countywide sales tax is at 20%. That's what we've been trending this current year. Next year, we're forecasting really about a 2% increase over this current year. State shared sales tax.
Wait. So county sales tax is running at 20%?
20% higher than last year.
20% higher than last. Okay, good. Just checking to make sure.
Higher than last year.
Okay.
And next year, we're anticipating it to slow down. Okay. And then state shared sales tax at current is trending at 22% higher than last year. And next year, we're forecasting that to slow down as well. Okay. And then vehicle license tax is currently flat. And I think I've spoke to this in the past. It's probably due to the availability of new vehicles and that type of thing. So future-wise, we're not anticipating any decline, just continue that flat. Questions on revenue assumptions here? Perfect. So in the forecast slide, which I will show in a couple of slides, I have put some assumptions in for employee compensation, benefits, retirement, workers' comp. We've also had additional personnel requests from departments, and I just kind of wanted to give you a general idea of where those personnel requests are going to for next year. And then we've also received increases in operational expenses, and really high-level highlights. A lot of it is due to increasing costs, that are being passed along to us from our vendors. Utilities rate increases, maintenance increases, custodial increases due to new buildings, the cost of supplies, those types of things. In our sheriff's office, the predominant increase in their operational expenses is due to the rising fuel costs. Any questions about the way in which we put together our assumptions on expenditures?
Seeing none, no.
Perfect. And this slide here, and I didn't give you numbers. In the next slide, you'll see the large number. So these are the types of projects, one-time, that we would like to use one-time revenues for facilities, technology, and fleet. So if you have any questions, I can certainly answer any of those on any of these projects, but I don't want to get into specific details.
Did we not just do the San Manuel Community Center? That's on here, but
I believe that is a design project for the community center roof, I believe. And
okay.
Okay. Okay. So we have our general fund forecast, and we've looked at the current year projection revenues. I think we did a really good job when we came to you in March, giving you a good picture of what things look like. Expenditures at this point in time, really the only change I have there is the one-time incentive award that the board approved that we paid to our employees. So you'll see that change in that fiscal year 21-22 projected column. And then, so for the out years, I have three scenarios. The first scenario for fiscal year 22-23, I have and indicated on the slide here, the primary property tax changes. So the first column for 22-23 is the tax rate being at $3.69. And you can see here where if we were to move forward with the tentative budget, with a request of the compensation increases, the departmental ongoing requests, and any one-time either capital facilities or technology improvements, we would end our fund balance at $51 million, just over $51 million, and with a reserve of about a 21% reserve. Second scenario I have up here is for primary property tax at the $3.59 rate, which is a 10-cent decrease. So in this scenario, we can still fund those things and still have a ending fund balance of about $48.8 million and a 20%. Which is a 20% reserve. This is essentially a balanced budget. We could do modifications to that to balance it even more if you'd like. I simply just put this as a kind of a halfway point between what our current rate is and our TNT rate. And our TNT rate, which is that last column, is 19 cents lower than the current rate. And in that scenario, you can see that by doing so, we become into a deficit in our budget. So our ending fund balance at that point would be at a 19% reserve and just over $46 million. Any questions there?
would it be possible to, I mean, there is some room in there. Can you go down like to 12 cents? Does that make it come out at still about 20% and not go negative?
Yes, sir. So I didn't do the 12-cent reduction, but I did do a scenario not presented here, but 13-cent reduction or $3.56 would be that revenue less ongoing expenditures would be $196,000 instead of the $1,125,000 that you're seeing there. So basically balanced. And then the reserve would be right at that 20%. I don't have the dollar amount for that ending fund balance, but we would still be at that 20%.
So you could go 13 cents down?
Correct.
And that would be pretty sharp pencil balanced. That would be good.
Yeah. Okay. That's with, of course, the conservative forecast on revenues and adding in all of the one-time and ongoing expenditures that have been requested.
No, I'm happy to see that, and I like to see the 20% fund balance at the end, because I know after the last recession we had a hard time doing anything, couldn't even pay our bills, and this allows us to weather small storms.
Mm-hmm.
If I may.
You may.
We were struggling to keep 15% in. I mean, we were stretching it pretty thin. 20% is a nice comfort level, I think.
So, any other questions? No? Okay, go ahead.
Direction I'm hearing from you is a 12 or 13-cent decline in the primary property tax level, and then approval of things that were requested by.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And so, lastly, in response to, I believe, request for a discussion regarding district budgets, staffing, and operational needs, I put together this chart that shows fiscal year 2021 expenditures by district, the amended budget for this current fiscal year, the number of FTEs in that in each of the districts, which also includes yourselves, where your actual costs are. And I think this was as of about 2 weeks ago, so probably changed slightly. What we're currently projecting costs to be for each of these districts, and then the requested budgets for each of the districts, what the changes in staffing looks like, and what those increases look like.
Thank you. And probably the reason for bringing this out is because we look at everybody else's budgets and nobody really looks at our budgets. The way this works is, we're the Board of Supervisors, and then it comes down to the touch point, which is Mr. Liu and Ms. Shepard and Mr. Patel, and then everything goes out from us. Mr. Liu has broad discretion in changing or, adding to budgets and doing things, but we can't really ask him to do that because we're his boss, and that just doesn't work well. So we need to bring this out so we can discuss it with the five of us and decide how we're going to go forward. And we want the public, not that there's a whole lot of public left out here, but we want the public to be able to see this, what we spend. So is there anyone that would care to start in on this? I mean, I'm looking at my budget. I mean, I operate with, it says 2, and that's myself and my district administrator. And I've done that for years. My predecessor did that, a year and a half. My predecessor did it for 8 years. And we had a large area. We had a high percentage of the incorporated areas. And I would say the majority of it was incorporated. And we truly don't get a whole lot of calls from incorporated areas, i.e. the city of Maricopa. We would get calls from the folks in the south and Thunderbird Farms and Hidden Valley, and we'd go down and we'd deal with them, and that was fine. But we rarely got any calls from city of Maricopa unless it was something to do with the city and intergovernmental agreements or flood control or help on roads. So in looking at all this and trying to be sharp pencil here where we're going down 13 cents, I mean, I think we need to look at our budgets and see where we can be sharper. One of my suggestions early on was to deal with analysts from the budget office to go through and look at each department, ask what they need to be more efficient, what they need to be, to be more efficient and provide services. And I believe that's what you're doing, and we're moving forward on that. And that's great. And I'd suggested, all departments, and we've had talks about having a budget committee, and we don't need that. We really need staff to do that, and that was a recommendation. And truly, I would say come look at our offices as well. I know everybody gets a little nervous when I say that, but say, what do you need to do? How do you handle your budget? What do you do? And so that's what I'm asking about this. And so I certainly don't mind somebody having, say, 2 employees, but I mean, I'm looking at District 1 here and seeing, 5 folks, and I have a hard time with that.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
You may.
It's 6, and we have.
Well, you're one of them.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so it reflects 6, and with the changes, recent changes, we need to look at that. With the larger district that you're getting, you're going to need more people, I think, to help handle that office. So we certainly need to adjust that and look at that.
So I look at that and I see, well, we have the mammoth. So I have an office, which is going to be here in this building, and I have the one upstairs, and that's it. In our previous iteration of districts, can you show that, please?
Natasha, can you bring up the district maps, please? Would you like to see the old map or the new?
The old map
the
first,
old map?
yes.
Okay.
So here's the old map, and, there it is. So Supervisor Kavanaugh had the purple area. I had the darker blue area at the bottom. Now, I live at the bottom right into that, and my office was up in Maricopa. So you travel around. Arizona City's unincorporated, Red Rock unincorporated, Saddlebrook area unincorporated, Maricopa incorporated. If you look on there, I'm sorry, I can barely see it, but I had 58,354 people in incorporated areas and 32,000 in unincorporated areas. Pretty large percentage. Again, still able to do it with one person. Now, in the purple area for Supervisor Kavanaugh, we did allow him to have an office in Coolidge, and he had the one in Mammoth. Mammoth, for years, was handled by Supervisor Rios, and he had one person in that office for years. We now have 2. And looking at what that staff does, they don't truly do, for me anyway, I don't see that they do anything for my office personally. They do handle customer service issues. They do help with, they've been in charge of doing burn permits, trash vouchers, keys to the community center, taking some tax payments, I believe like 125 in a year, and then doing things for the supervisor. But in my eyes, that's a customer service issue, and it's not something I need in my budget. And I believe that we've discussed having this moved over to community development and having a person staff that from community development and shifting the budget pool. So that's where I am. Now, can we go to the new, and on this, Supervisor Goodman here had about 130,000 people in his area, and he was the mayor and the chief of police. I mean, he's like everything there. So he,
and no memory,
and no memory of it. He doesn't remember any of it. But anyway, so obviously the districts changed, and here's the new districts. Maybe, yes. So now we're looking at, say, my district here, where I have 62,400 something in unincorporated and 21,000 incorporated. So will I need more staff? I'm thinking I probably don't, but I may have to change my mind later, but I don't think I do. I'll try to continue on with 1. Now I understand that Supervisor Goodman has 2 and Supervisor Miller has 2. Supervisor Surtee has 2. So I try to understand the need for so many, and I understand that Supervisor Kavanaugh has 2 offices and wants to fully staff those. I question the need for having to staff 2 offices. Any other comments, Supervisor Miller?
Well, and I want to just kind of explain mine, because if you looked at that chart, shows, -1. That's not really, I had an overlap because I had an employee that was on because she was going to retire. I brought on another person. So it looks like I got rid of one. And really, the person that was replaced I consider her part-time. I don't know, maybe her hours make her full-time. I don't know where that break-off is. But I did restructure my office slightly with Mr. Cruz and Ms. Hooper, because of just as busy. I've gotten a lot more busy with water and transportation and those needs, and I want to make sure that my constituency doesn't fall through the cracks and that their issues are addressed. It's worked out quite well, and I'm very pleased with the new structure. But I've always tried to keep this budget very, very flat as best I could if you went. And I think if you went back and saw the history, and I always like to look at the actuals, because the actuals is what is really, that shows you how conservative, a fiscal conservative you really are, because that's the telltale sign. We're all given budgets, which are targets, but the actuals are the ones that really will show your methodologies. That being said, there was a point where it showed my budget had jumped up probably about 6 years ago. But that was because they reclassified my employee to a position that I didn't hire her at, but I was not allowed to leave her at that position. I was mandated to move her up, and she got a bump in her salary. Good, bad, or otherwise, I didn't have a choice. So if you looked at my actuals and it shows this bump up, that's the reason that it increased. It wasn't a scenario where I had a lot of control of that. So I mean, and again, look at everybody's actuals. That will tell you how conservative you are with your dollars.
Thank you.
And that's just. But I wanted to explain that minus one person is kind of not really the truth. It's just because we had an overlap of 2 employees, a former one and a new one.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. As I look at this, I believe I'm still the highest as far as unincorporated area at 77,000 residents in that area. One of the things that's going to be extremely helpful, and I do welcome that analysis from the budget department working with my staff. But one of the things and Supervisor McClure and I have had this conversation about some of the things to help meet the needs of that unincorporated area is perhaps hiring somebody that we share or from our community development and make them a part of that, like ombudsmen, because that seems to be our biggest issue in my district, is trying to deal with many of the problems and working through the snake holes of government. And if we can put something like that together, I think that would help in some of our budgeting aspects on our budgets and help us in the community side. Yes.
Chairman, Supervisor Goodman, I believe, and Brent, I believe, is still here, but I believe in next year's budget in community development, they have requested an ombudsman position.
Just one?
Just one.
Okay. For me? For us? For us?
For the county, sir.
Okay. All right. All of them. Well, that's still 140,000 between us, by the way. And the rest of them are in most of them are in cities from that standpoint, other than the very limited amount that you 3 gentlemen have in yours. But when you think about it, there's 220,000 unincorporated residents that are in unincorporated areas in the entire county. The last statistic I looked at, and 140,000 are split between us too. And so specifically having somebody to meet, and most of them are in the Santan Valley area. And so I think having that particular need that can be staffed at that location to assist us with some of these things like what Pete and Supervisor Kavanaugh has had access to up there, if we can provide those type of summer services where they actually internally trained in different parts, like what they were doing in parts of your district on the east side, to where they were taking collections or they were doing something along those lines. Anyway, that would help, I think, a lot.
So in the Mammoth office, talking about having customer service. So there's a computer kiosk in the lobby, and many people come there, and yes, they want to pay their tax bill, and they will show a tax bill, and they want to pay it. They don't necessarily have a checking account, so they want to pay with a cashier check or a certified money order or something like that. And that's fine, except that many times what happens is there's another lien, there's interest on that payment, and it's not taken care of. So then the treasurer has to go back and find that person and figure it out. With the kiosk that's out in the lobby, if there's someone there that can answer questions, let me make a phone call for you, or let me show you how the computer works, and log them into the areas, then you can get an exacting amount. That's what I'm looking for. For instance, the keys at the community center up there, that's moving to a one-time key lock, digital key lock. There won't be keys. I've had calls in my office where there's no one there at the office to give them the keys when they've got an appointment. So, where are you? There's supposed to be two of you there. So we're going to go to that method so that someone can make a phone call and say, hey, I'd like to reserve the center, and hey, here's a credit card, or I can send you a check, or I can do whatever by mail. The Open Space and Trails will send out the letter that says, here's the key, here's the number for that door. It works today, and then it's gone, right? The trash vouchers, we've had issues. They're handed out, that's fine. Some people are very ingenious. They have copied them. They're supposed to get 6 a year. Some have had as many as, 8, 12, something like that, right? Pretty good at that. We're going to change that. Now you can go to the Public Works Yard in Dudleyville or Oracle. You can pick up a voucher. The treasurer, again, we're back to online or being helped. There's also the possibility of a kiosk in Oracle for people to use it at the courthouse. And there's probably something up in Dudleyville, and I know there's some in Superior. So we're looking at ways to change the way these work to be able to process. But we'll try to have somebody there to answer questions. If it's half or three-quarter time, that's great because it's not that busy. I have not seen it that busy. So that's right. And yes, ma'am.
So Chairman,
if I may?
You may.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I can provide, we have the statistics on that, so you can adjust the employees however you see fit, but it's important to look at the stats and the stacks of, we create work tickets out there, so you'll be able to see where the balance of work occurs. So I think that'll be informative for you.
I appreciate that, but I also don't see the need for two people. And in fact, quite honestly, I've gone by a few times, and every time I go by, there's one there.
Yeah, so the benefit of having two people out there is you can send someone out to go look at issues that come up to deal with the public. So that's the benefit of having two people out there. And
But that's what I do. I go out and look at the things.
Is that many problems?
I mean, if there's that many problems, then
Yeah.
yes. But I mean, I've been around the area for a long time. I typically go out and look at the problem. I don't send somebody else.
Well, we changed districts, and previously, as you know, it was an enormous district. So
Yes.
if you're going out to look at a pothole or the hole in the bridge, and you have someone in the office, it's better to have someone sent from Mammoth than from Coolidge.
Okay, well.
So if your guys are attacking the fact that I had employees, I mean, that's fine. I get it. But part of the reason the last guy got fired was he wasn't servicing, according to the constituents, he wasn't servicing them well. So we have two fairly low-paid employees to make sure we service people well. And that's your decision. It'll be your district. You can change it any way you like.
Oh. Okay, so fairly low. Okay, well, that's fine. That's two low ones. you're asking for 2 administrative managers, along with the 2, and by the way, those 2 people that work for you are your office, not their District 1 employees, just to be clear. So, okay. So, but you're looking at having 2 administrative managers, and then you're looking for a chief of staff.
So this is, under the previous map, we started developing this budget. So we don't need as many people because Coolidge, for the most part, is going to be serviced by the city, just like Maricopa. We're not going to have the foot traffic.
Okay.
So we need to reevaluate our needs here.
But in your request for budget increase, you're looking at $50,000 to increase administrative manager and a chief of staff. And to my knowledge, there's no chief of staff in the Board of Supervisors offices. There is a chief of staff in the county attorney's office because they actually have a bunch of staff. But I mean,
so it's my understanding from speaking with HR, the chief of staff role is based on qualifications, education, experience.
Yeah.
So we have an employee that falls better into that description than district administrator. And as I understand it, in times past, we had a different chief of staff role and job description, but because very few people or nobody filled that role appropriately, nobody had the qualifications, and Mary Ellen can correct me if I don't have this, my memory, perhaps, but we had it at one time, and then it would have to be recreated or something like that. So that's the discussions we've had. So the chief of staff presently is in name only because there is no job description written correctly for that.
but it's quite high paid. I mean, it's quite a bit more than you even make.
Well,
and I'm looking at dollars and expenditures, and I'm looking at what managers of large departments make, and this person would be making more than some of the large departments.
Well, it's based on qualifications. It's so I don't set the salary. So
I understand that.
Yeah, what we do is we go to HR. We say, here's a person, their education, experience in government, and so on and so forth. What is the pay? I don't set the pay. They tell me what the fair market value is.
So, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Maybe that's what we need to reexamine, is what the job description really is and how that falls in with the pay level of what we're talking about here. Because, quite honestly, we have staff that are at our hand, right at our disposal within the county attorney's office, within the different departments that we can actually go to rely on a lot of the expertise, and that's where we should be going when it comes to our legal advice and everything else of that nature, directly to our county attorney's office. And then with our community development, working in conjunction with them, maybe what we really need to do is re-examine some of our pay scales or even some of the qualifications to put them at that higher pay scale, because quite honestly, I think the position that is necessary to fill our staff on our boards for our districts, I don't think we need somebody at that highest level. We're not big enough yet as a county. Maricopa County has that, but they've got over 5 or 6 million people, and they have the revenue coming into it to do that with. We just don't. And so when you talk about conservative, fiscally conservative, that's something we really need to take a hard look at when it comes to our staffing. So maybe that's what I'm going to suggest that we do, that we actually look at that, because you're incorrect in that you do have something to set there with the 5 of us if we decide to do something. So we're the ones that actually set that.
Well, yes, as a board, we do set the pay rates.
And this was last done in 2014 when the supervisors all came and said, hey, we need a district administrator and we need to set at this level, and they set all the budgets roughly the same and adjusted a little bit for your district and a little bit for the other districts, and Mr. Rios got a little bit more because of the size of his district. But it's gotten way out of whack if you look at these numbers here.
Mr. Chairman.
District 2 so small he could do it with an electric scooter.
Oh, we bought him one. We got him an electric scooter. He doesn't have a car.
I said that. I might forget where I'm going, but I can do that.
Supervisor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this brings back memories of a slippery slope. So if you go back about 7 years ago, and we were trying to reclassify people, we had doing study after study. We had supervisors of departments that had nobody to supervise. I mean, this thing just got out of hand. We had all kinds of classifications. We had all kinds of pay differentials that didn't make sense. And it's because of these kinds of actions. You have to put some sideboards on this thing. And I can't even imagine if I called my district administrator a chief of staff, like he's over the top of handling Carol. I mean, come on, it's just doesn't make any sense. One person, we're just not at that size, as Supervisor Goodman mentioned. And I wouldn't even say that you'd need that at a level of 5 or 6 employees. It's just becomes a bureaucracy that becomes unmanageable. And I'm not trying to say that we don't have supervisorial positions in different departments where they do have probably maybe 4 or 5 or 6 different people that they're kind of in charge of, and helps to keep the workflow going. It just doesn't make sense. And like I said, it got crazy around here because they were just giving people titles and positions and raises for not doing anything any different. And so it took us, the better part of 4 years to really kind of get our arms around that and get it squared away. I'm all about compensating people for the work that they do, but we've got to keep it in perspective.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Kavanaugh.
So I presumed under the district change that we would be retaining a couple employees, basically one for each office. And we talk about a person, the district administrator, chief of staff. This person is an attorney. He is a major in the Marine Corps, has enormous government experience. We say, what's the value add for the county? Well, the county management staff came to him and said, hey, we're having trouble with the FAA and expansion projects and whatnot down at the air park. And he was able to with his skills, navigate through that. So, that's when you say just another person. He does have some skills that are beyond. But if you're saying that I should eliminate that position, then tell me that.
Okay, I'm telling you that. That's what That's one of the
eliminate
things
the DA.
To eliminate, because first and foremost, like I said before, we don't necessarily have a need to have somebody in our department, in our district, that has that kind of qualification. Because we have the district attorney's office that is there for us that we should be relying on. So I'm not sure having somebody of that capacity, and Brad's a nice guy, but nonetheless, paying that kind of salary to somebody that can lend to that area. But to your point, I have somebody on my staff as well that has extensive background in finance that multiple times has helped with some of the readjustments of salaries and things of that nature extensively, and we've used her to do that. And so, yeah, I get that. And I'm glad I have her because she can help me with a lot of our budgeting and give recommendations. And as we've looked at this together, this is something that I'm just sitting there thinking, wow. I mean, I'm looking at the numbers now. I didn't even know what they were before. But I'm looking at these numbers now. And
under this, we have one that's unfilled, so there's 5. And then we don't need a staff of 4 for these 2 officers. It's a totally different environment. We're not going to have the walk-in traffic and the things that we do down there.
I understand. And I can tell you the walk-in traffic in Maricopa, I have many, many, many days where the phone never rings. We might get 6 emails.
Maybe they didn't like you.
Maybe they didn't like me. They did vote for me. And, you know, the people that call, you know, are walking. I have people that call in and, you know, and yeah, let's go to lunch. Okay, and we go have lunch with the mayor. We go have lunch with somebody, a constituent. But it's not a busy office, and it really does. I mean, it has a space for a receptionist. I've never had the need for a receptionist.
Yeah.
I have one, and she handles all the traffic and manages the entire district.
Yeah, I anticipate that will be.
But, okay, so that if you anticipate that, then I can then also say then, okay, having an office in Coolidge and one in Maricopa is overkill. Now, in the last iteration of the maps, it made sense to have you could have one in Coolidge and have one in Mammoth and have a piece here. But this is such a consolidated district that constituents can get to you. I mean, at any rate, I mean, I drive 45 minutes to Florence. I've got constituents that drive 45 minutes here. I drive from my home 45 minutes out to Mammoth. I drive around. 45 minutes is not unreasonable for anyone to get anywhere. And I understand that there are some, I was talking to some, 4 miles was too much. So, you know, okay, fine. But I come to them. I don't make them come to me. So I don't see the need for 2 offices and that overhead.
Well, certainly that's something to consider. Are we taking a vote today, or is this a discussion?
No, this is just an item of discussion.
It's all discussion.
Yeah.
This is just looking at numbers.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman.
Good.
Mr. Supervisor Miller.
And a point I should have brought up a few minutes ago. I mean, I have totally relied on staff. If it is even close to a legal discussion, I'm calling Chris. I mean, I'm just getting a hold of the county attorney's office. I don't want anybody else to be involved in that discussion unless I'm talking. I've used the community development center. I mean, when it's a zoning issue, I rely on the staff to fill that gap between what I know, what I don't know, and how can we get to a resolution. I've called Tasha Spears. I've called so many other departments. And Michael and I understand this is where the answers will come from. We reach out to staff. We don't need more staff. We got plenty of staff that's competent and can get us the right answers. And you just got to run lean machine. That's how I like to do it. That's how I've been doing it ever since I took this office. So I just don't like the fact that, I'll be real honest with you, Brad is a really good guy, but I would never introduce him as an attorney because that's not his role, and it implies he's going to give you legal advice, and that's not good because that's not who should be giving you legal advice. It is the county attorney's office, full responsibility.
There's no implication that Brad gives me legal advice.
It's
he doesn't give me
it's
legal
the
advice.
appearance. It is absolute. You know, perception is reality, and that is an issue.
Well, you know, I know there's been a concern about, you know, his time off, and I hope that's not a concern here.
That's never been, you know, in fact, whenever he went and did what he did, that's just a form of government that I think it was really good and was very a grand thing that we did with the Ukrainian people there. I mean, even Jeff would say that. He's got family from that area. And so kudos, and I appreciate Brad taking it. This has no bearing whatsoever on that.
Oh, good.
At all, from me, just so you know and the public know.
So this is just business. I mean, this is just numbers and trying to be efficient and cover our fiduciary responsibility.
Mr. Chair, through that discussion, I don't have any direction of what you would like me to do with the district
Cut the tax
budget.
rate 13 cents. Got that
Tax
right?
rate, 13, got that, and I got the approval, but is there something that you would direct me to do in regards to the 5 districts and their budget
What
requests?
you suggested earlier about meeting with each
I think meet with your budget analyst and come and say, hey, this works. This is what your world is, and this would work best in your department.
Okay.
Maybe you need somebody. Maybe you don't need somebody. You know, let's take a look.
But if I could just add to that even more. You know, when we talk about, each of us talk about our needs, look at how those needs can even be met with additional staff from community development or from the attorney's office or whatever the case may be, whatever our need is going to be. Look and see if it could be staffed through some other direction. I think, you know, I've been in here for 5.5 years, and I've watched Supervisor Miller and how he has interacted with a lot of our staff, especially community development. I mean, you just saw and witnessed him in the relationship he has with Lester, for instance, that is just recently is retiring, and that says a lot for not only Miller but for Lester and how he was willing to go out of the extra way to help us. He's done the same for me as well as everybody that's on this board to go out of his way and to help us solve our problems. And same way with, you know, I've had some conversations with code enforcement that has gone out of their way to help out in some of our situations that we've had. So I think that's, when you discuss it, look at some other options, as I guess is part of what I'm asking, as to how we can help us better serve our constituents using what the resources we currently have.
Absolutely. Thank
Okay.
you.
Did that help?
That helped.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms.
That's
Woods.
all I
Appreciate
have
it.
for today. Thank you.
All right. Item 20, discussion board members' request for future agenda items. Does anyone have any future requests? Hearing none, we need to move to executive session. Can I get a motion to convene to executive session, please?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion, a second. In favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, we're in executive session. Thank you, everyone.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we are all adjourned.